Hello and welcome to the March 16th, 2021 special meeting of the City Council. Today at 5:45 p.m. we have a study session. Madam City Clerk, if you would please conduct the roll call.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Paul.
Here. And Madam City Manager, if you would please introduce our study session item today.
Sure. This is a discussion regarding the consideration of a Measure A funded potential property acquisition at the shopping center site located at 10591 North De Anza Boulevard in Cupertino, largely known as the Outback Steakhouse location. And I will hand it over to Ms. Consuelo Hernandez to start the discussion, and city staff also has some materials specific to the site location itself.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. I want to welcome Ms. Hernandez from the County Office of Supportive Housing. I also want to thank our County Supervisor, Joe Simidian, for being here as well tonight to help us discuss or answer questions from the county side. So welcome, Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. And I am sharing my screen. Apologies, I'm fumbling through the presentation for a second. Thank you. Consuelo Hernandez, Director with the Office of Supportive Housing. It's nice to see you all again. Catherine Kaminsky, my Deputy Director, was recently at your council meeting in December talking about the community plan to end homelessness, and we're very happy to be here today. I wanted to just share this slide, which shows the property description. For those of you that may not be familiar, one of the things that we've been doing on the county side, in part because of the community plan to end homelessness goals, and as part of our implementation for the 2016 Measure A Affordable Housing Bond, is really looking countywide at different opportunities to acquire properties for the development of affordable housing. And we do this in large part as part of the implementation strategy and working collaboratively with cities' planning departments to really understand the zoning. So what we've done here in this slide is just to show you an outline of the property. The site is approximately 1.5 acres. I've included the land use information in the left-hand column, which is also summarized in the memo that the Office of Supportive Housing provided City Manager Fang with. And really, it's focusing on what's permitted on the site and what is the critical land use path that the City of Cupertino permits on the site. As we included in our memo, we believe that there are 4 different permits that are required in order to develop at the property. And it has to go through the recommending body of the Planning Commission and then returns to the City Council for full approval. We've outlined one of the partnership strategies is to work really closely with the Planning Department in understanding the land use. And I jumped right in, Mayor, and apologize for not indicating that we are in the middle of the acquisition process. And what that means is that we are completing our analysis to determine whether the county should acquire the property. It's a very early process at this stage. Typically, what we like to do is really understand what the development potential is, get to know the neighborhood, get to know what uses are around it. And if I can go to the next slide, this shows you the site from North De Anza. I actually visited the site, walked it. We look at its proximity to services, and us coming here to the City Council is to inform you of our intent to acquire. The Board of Supervisors in February considered the acquisition, which is the first step in our process. And assuming that our analysis is completed and we get all the feedback that we are gathering between now and April, we would return back to the board with the next action. So it's, again, very early stages. We are looking forward to collaborating with the city in understanding from a land use perspective what that critical path is. And part of that partnership is looking at, making sure that the county's understanding of the entitlement process and the land use is correct, and working with you all to share whatever information you might need as we move forward. At this point, we don't have any more details about the property outside of what I've shared with you today. We do not have a project in mind, but we are hopeful that together we can come up with a strategy in partnership with you and in partnership with West Valley or any other stakeholder that you feel would be appropriate to bring to the table. And happy to answer any questions. I do have one more slide which shows the view from Valley Green Drive. This is one of the egress/ingress zones into the property. And I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. And are there any questions from council with regard to the presentation? Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so first, thank you, Joe Submidian, for bringing this to our community. I mean, greatly appreciated. We all know how important, these types of projects are these days. And Ms. Hernandez, thank you so much for your presentation. So what you said is that you don't have a project in mind yet, but can you give us some indicators, does this make sense? I think you said it's 1.5 acres, and if it was like 40 or 45 units per acre, somewhere around 60 units, would they be simply below market rate, or would they be specifically for housing insecure, or some other designated people needing the housing? Can you give us some kind of idea of what you would be envisioning?
Sure. Thank you, Council Member. The current dwelling units per acre, according to the zoning ordinance, is 25 units per acre. And so at the very minimum, we would be looking at a 37-unit development. What we did is we looked at the project, the Veranda, which is the first Measure A project that was funded in our county. It was the first project to officially open. It's in Cupertino. And we looked at that design of that project. The city council at the time did approve a density bonus for that property by 35%. So there may be an opportunity for us to explore that same strategy here. Again, it's a little early, but assuming that through these conversations and community engagement, that there is an opportunity to request a density bonus, that we might be looking at something a little higher than 37. But that is part of the next phase. Once we take possession of the property, the real conversations start about looking at different designs, looking at different schematics, really going out to the community and seeing what's palatable there. From a population perspective, again, it's a little early for us. We are hopeful that we can tie it to our Measure A goals, which do focus on 80% AMI level and below, in order for it to be competitive for tax credits, which the tax credits do have a cap on the AMI levels at 80% or below. And I will share with you that there is a certain proportion number of units that have to be at lower AMI levels. And those are the factors that we would include when we start coming up with an idea for the project, is what is the right AMI levels. But we do have that cap of 80%. I hope that answers your question.
Pretty much. If you could maybe just go a little bit more, would there be some units for ELI? Some addition, some of those units set aside for those in need?
Absolutely. As the tax credits do have a project type. So there's 2 or 3 different project types that we would explore. One of those project types for tax credits includes setting aside at least 25% of the units as ELI. And then in our Measure A housing program, one of our project types does require up to 33% of the units be set aside as ELI, but there are other factors that we take into consideration. How much we can leverage Measure A, there's other funding sources out there that have different caps and limitations. So we really try to focus on looking at all of the funding that's available. What is the need in the community? If there's a desire to have more ELI units, we factor that in as well. So it really, those are the types of conversations and questions that we would start to get to once we take possession of the property. And happy to figure out with you all how much you would like to be involved, how those conversations happen, both at the community level and at the council level.
Maybe one last question, and that is that do you foresee the city participating financially, or do you feel all the funding is already out there that you're going to try to get, or would you foresee that some contribution from the city?
We always do try, council member, to leverage all other resources. The policies in Measure A do require that for every Measure A dollar that we invest, we have 3 non-Measure A dollars. The city of Cupertino is part of our home consortium. These are housing dollars that come to the county from the federal government for the production of low and moderate income housing. As a consortium member, we could submit this application and leverage the home dollars. Naturally, with any partnership with cities, if there is funding available, we would push for that or ask for that, but understand that there's limitations. We, again, definitely try to leverage every funding opportunity that's out there.
Thank you very much. Great.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. And our next hand is from Vice Mayor Chow.
Hi. Thank you for considering this project. I think this will be a great addition for Cupertino. And my perception is in our area, other supportive services are lacking. So I'm wondering, would the county be looking into maybe using this location to bring in other services that this area is lacking? But I don't know what other supportive services are there around this area in other cities. That might be good information to have.
Thank you, council member. All of our housing development properties do include supportive services like residential assistance, connecting people to existing services. One of the benefits of having a strong partner like West Valley Community Services is that we can leverage that relationship that the county currently has. They are one of our homelessness prevention service providers and EAN provider. We have a contract with them through the community development block grant that we manage. And those are services that we would be happy to explore how we bring to the property. But the property will have services as part of the operating budget. Again, it really depends on what the population is. There's a minimum that's required to be provided that meets the county's criteria. And those services include financial literacy. We have most recently had a lot of cooking classes and nutrition, particularly around COVID and people not being able to really socialize outside, focusing on different ways of engaging with community to basically build a sense of community within the property. We will definitely be a neighbor and making sure that that's incorporated into the services plan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. And our next hand is from Councilmember Way. Councilmember Way, you'll need to unmute.
I did not mute myself. So I'm here to confirm the process. The process is the county is in the process of acquiring the land using Measure A funding. And after that, the project will be defined with a collaboration between the county, the city, and the neighborhood. And the funding of the project actually depends on what kind of projects we decide to go with. And then, so there might be some tax leverages and money from all over the place. And what time frame we're looking at if the whole process goes through? 3 years, 5 years? Do you have an estimate?
Thank you, council member. You're correct in the process. So once we acquire the property, we will work to select a development partner. The county has a development pool of qualified developers. There are 12 of them. We will issue a request for offer to select the partner. One way to partner with the city of Cupertino is to actually have staff assigned to serve on the panel so that there is an opportunity to build a relationship with the select developer early on. And once we have a development partner in place, we will start to focus on community engagement. And a lot of the community engagement is getting out to the community early before a project is identified. And what that means is the same conversation that I'm having with you, we would have with the community to really get to know what are the pains and gains. Are there issues with parking? Are there issues with lacks of services? Really try to understand what can we collectively achieve at the property before we start thinking about what the project looks like. And that process typically takes about 3 to 6 months before we have anything in place to present. And then from a land use entitlement perspective, that really depends on the city. What we've seen for 4 permits, like I mentioned earlier, that could take anywhere between 18 months and 2 years. In looking at the process that happened at the veranda, that's about how long it took. And then once we get the entitlements, it takes us about another year to cobble together the financing, get in line for tax credits, and then 2 years for construction. So all in all, it takes about 5 years generally from the moment that you identify a property until you get to the opening.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Way. And we have Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for staff. So when I look on the zoning map, I see that it is a non-residential land use. And then when I go to the definition for non-residential, it shows that the residential component is supporting. So I was wondering what that means in terms of what kind of development we'd end up at this site. That's my first question, and then I'll keep going after that.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. John Martier, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. The zoning for this site is planned general commercial, light industrial, residential. So residential is a permitted use for zoning and also a permitted use for the general plan. The anticipation we would think would be some type of commercial component to this as well as a residential component as proposed by the county.
Okay, thank you, John. And if they were to provide something like a daycare at that site, would that count as commercial, or is that something where it needs to have some approval for that?
It wouldn't count as commercial. It would be non-residential, of course. As of now, this, of course, is a total preliminary conversation. It would probably need some type of use permit to be part of this.
And thank you. And for this part of the city, if they put commercial on the ground floor, do they get to go to 60 feet, or is that not part of it? Okay. And then I'm just going to read off our current RENA entitlements that we have for the city. We have a total of 3,457. If I heard correctly that there's an 80% cap for this, what we had, 80% AMI cap. What we had for our projected need for extremely low, very low was 356. What we have entitled for that income category is 406. That's including Westport and Valco SB 35. For low income, our projected RENA need was 207. And what we have entitled is, 866 entitled. So we were required the 207. And for moderate, it was, unfortunately, that's 81 to 120% AMI. For moderate, we have 125 entitled, but we needed to supply 231. And above moderate, that's over 120% AMI. The projected need was 270. The amount entitled was 2,153. So where we really do need assistance, if you can provide it, is with the extremely low income. And we've had plenty of community requests for extremely low income housing for the developmentally disabled. And we've had that request repetitively, and that I hope that's something that you will be looking into. Okay. And so that was it, just regarding that, the daycare on the ground floor, because that could help if you have low income residents so that they can go out and work and it be nearby. So that would be something I'd be interested in seeing. Okay.
Great, thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And you do bring up a really good point with regard to the arena numbers. You know, I hope that the word can get out there, you know, by means of prefacing the question, that we actually have put in good faith a lot of entitlements vis-a-vis what the requirements are. And I would say that we must be within the top 10% of the state with regard to how that metric is concerned. But in terms of that entitlement period that we have for RENA, Ms. Hernandez, did you get a sense that when you were talking about the entitlement process, and I was actually kind of heartened in the context of this question to hear that it may be a matter of years, right? Because if we were able to look into our following RENA allocation period, which I believe spans 2023 to 2029, I think it's a 7-year period that follows our current 7-year period of 2015 to 2022. Is there a possibility from what you're projecting that we would be looking at the entitlement, at least piece of this? I'm assuming, you know, the building permits could very well easily fall within that following RENA cycle. But do you think the entitlement period might actually fall within our following RENA cycle as well?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make sure that I understood your question. So we're talking about the current planning RENA cycle versus the next RENA cycle, and whether the entitlement approval will happen in the next RENA cycle.
That is the question. Yes, from your perspective.
Yes, I think from a RENA perspective, unless there's been a significant change that I'm not aware of, which is quite possible, when you get credit for the unit is when the building permit is issued. So if we're looking at anywhere between 18 months to get to land use approval, it could very well be at the very beginning of your next RENA cycle.
I see. So you're saying nonetheless, the pulling of the building permits, of course, would happen, if not substantially after that point, it would happen after the entitlement. So in terms of, from your understanding of what the RENA credit is tied to, we're probably looking at the next RENA cycle for the pulling of the building permits for this space if it proceeds.
That's my general understanding, Mayor, but I would be happy to report back through the city manager. I think we also can fine tune our schedule a bit more. And, you know, again, once we take possession of the property later in the year, we will have an opportunity to sit down with the planning department, the selected developer, and start to hone in on what that schedule looks like. If there is a preferred or a concern from the council about the timing from a RENA perspective, we'd be happy to factor that in to see what is best for the city.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. At this point, I just want to give everyone kind of a heads up on what our remaining timetable looks like. We're nearing up on about 6:10. That gives us about half an hour or so. I did want to provide our supervisor a chance to make a few comments, but of course, we're in the middle of asking questions. I think my questions wrap it up, but we'll go to public comment. And again, to the public, once the first person stops speaking, I will no longer call any additional raised hands after that that aren't already up. And then when we bring it back for further commentary from council, I'd like to give Supervisor Simitian a couple of minutes to say a few words if he cares to share some thoughts with us. And then we'll divvy up the rest of the time among some final council comments for the purposes of this study session. So at this point, I see two members of the public with their hands up. They are Jennifer Griffin and Peggy Griffin. And you'll each have up to 3 minutes. And actually I see 5 members of the public with their hands up. Okay, so I think we can still allocate, now 6. All right, so let's do this. Let's try to, let me ask the public, please try to be succinct in your comments. We'll keep you at 3 minutes. And Jennifer, please feel free to start. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, Darcy, Mayor Darcy. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Mr. Simidian and Ms. Hernandez. We're glad to have you here. This is a very big, important step for Cupertino. I will tell you, I'm just going to start out and say that I personally have a lot of problems with the current RENA numbers. I have a great deal of doubt about their accuracy, but that is my interpretation and my problem. So we'll just start out here. Obviously, we need to have supportive services, housing for homeless folks. But then again, this is a new thing for Cupertino. Cupertino is a small city, and we need to ask clarifying questions about what this means. One of them is I'm a bit upset about losing another big restaurant in Cupertino. The Outback had lots of family space, a wide menu. I have gone there many times with my family to celebrate events. And I'm very, very concerned that now with this in red tier, we have restaurants reopening and there are people who need jobs. And this needs to be brought up. We have a family member who lost his job in restaurants in San Francisco, and he could go to work at a place like this. Then again, we are losing retail in this location. My next thing is that I was just going to say that this is not a great location for a lot of supportive housing. There are not a lot of supportive services nearby. That's why I appreciate the questions about what supportive services the county is planning on having, because a lot of people with supportive services have drug abuse problems, chronic psychiatric issues, or they may need a lot of help. One of the things is, will they have access to ongoing medical? The other question, which is from a family member, what is the county's plan if this supportive service housing complex at the Outback restaurant attracts homeless people to the upcoming Juniper Serra Trail by the 280 frontage? These homeless folks may be attracted to be near the supportive services. This is the devil's advocate. We need to ask these questions, especially if this is 5 years out. I'm not particularly interested in having a high density project here. 35 to 40 may be good.
10 seconds.
Issues about parking. This is right next to Apple, and we just need to ask a lot of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our hands raised are numbered by 5. They are Peggy Griffin, Lisa Warren, Connie Cunningham, Bob Shepard, and Janet Van Zoren. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening. Welcome, Joe Simidian and Ms. Hernandez. I appreciate the information ahead of time, and I second Jennifer Griffin's concerns about the loss of retail and the proximity of the site to the trail, which is supposed to be a big trail through Cupertino. I'm also excited with maybe the possibility of a very low income with help. I have an autistic niece and she works, but she needs to be very close to where she works. She doesn't have the housing and the support, but she would require very much support. So, and we are in need of that kind of housing. So if it could be a combined use of housing and retail, where the people that live in the housing can provide the services for the retail and the community benefits, but we are losing our retail. So anyway, that's my concern. Thank you for listening.
Great, thanks very much, Peggy. I will add that one of our panelists here tonight of WVCS, Josh Silo, does have his hand raised as well. After Supervisor Simitian gives his comments, if he cares to, I'll call on Mr. Silo. So Lisa, you're next. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I also have concerns about loss of retail. We're leaking retail everywhere. And offered in exchange for development over where retail was is pretty insulting, to say the least. So does that make this site the worst site possible? No, but it is something to consider if it continues to be sort of a trend. I have concerns that at 25 or with density bonus 37 units on this site, without some mix of use, will mean we're getting very small veranda-like units that really only house one person. I would prefer families to be able to take advantage, wrong phrase, but you understand what I mean, of the opportunity. And I love Commissioner Moore's idea, if that were the case, that there actually be some kind of daycare on ground floor so that working parents with small children could use that service and have it be included in part of what the service they get. I don't know if that's feasible. On the flip side, we've been having an outcry for ELI and, people with disabilities needing housing, and I really would like to support something like that. And in that event, if the smaller single person configuration is best for the area and the number of units you can get, then having folks with disabilities being able to live there comfortably, and perhaps instead of a daycare on the ground floor, have physical therapy and occupational therapy that they could benefit from. So these are just things that are coming to my mind as this is happening, but I think they're important, and I'm very sympathetic to the people that have been trying to get that kind of service in our city, not gaining much ground. Anyway, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker is Connie Cunningham. Welcome, Connie.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. And very nice to meet you, Supervisor Simitian, and also Consuelo Hernandez this evening. So interested in this particular project that you are pursuing to discuss with our city. I am, currently the chair of the Housing Commission, although speaking on my own behalf this evening. I think a project of this nature is perfect for Cupertino at this time. We have very few of these kinds of developments in our city, but we have many people who could use them because we have a missing middle in our housing that is available to our citizens. I am very interested myself in housing for all incomes and abilities, and I know many people in our city who agree with me as well. So I would like to say that I'm very hopeful from the comments made by our council members, by the mayor and the vice mayor, that they are also excited, as I am, that they would be working with the county to bring this proposal to our city. I am perhaps not as concerned as others who have mentioned about the loss of the Outback Steakhouse. Their restaurants can be many places, and we have quite a few new ones that have come in prior to pandemic. I understand, and I know that it's a problem, but I don't think that it has to be answered with this particular piece of property. Whereas I see that having nearby, work, having the West Valley Community Services nearby, having transit nearby, I think that those are all wonderful attributes for this particular property. And I would hope very much that you would continue to pursue this, and that we in the near future, maybe 5 years. But in any case, to see a vibrant place that is bigger than the veranda, but absolutely as nice as what the veranda is. It's a lovely, lovely community there. And I think it fits very well in with the design of our city. I don't think that's a problem at all when I've seen other projects around our communities in the area. So thank you very much, both of you, for coming. And thank you to the City Council for considering this really wonderful opportunity for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Our next speaker is Bob Shepard, followed by our last speaker from the public, Janet Van Zoren. Welcome, Bob. Bob, if you can hear this, your time is ticking. All right, I'm going to assume a possible technical difficulty. Bob, if you can get your hand raised back up after Janet is done, then we'll call you forward. Janet Van Zoren, welcome, Janet. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome, Janet. Okay. Unfortunately, we can't hear you now.
Okay, maybe if I keep holding the space bar down, you can hear me. Is that right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Paul, City Council members, and City Manager Fang. And also, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Hernandez and Joe Smithian. I'm pleased that the City of Cupertino has an opportunity to forge a partnership with the county to create possible 60 units of affordable housing on the land where the Outback Restaurant and other establishments, commercial establishments used to be. It's my understanding that this project would be funded using Measure A funds. I do have some questions about that with regard to the provision of services. If any of the units were set asides for people with developmental disabilities, would that restrict their services to those from the County Office of Services, or would they still be able to receive more appropriate services for their unique needs from the San Andreas Regional Center system? So that's something that we need to look at, because it could be a hang-up with regard to whether or not this project would be appropriate for the units of IDD housing that you all know I've been working so hard to try to get. On the other hand, I do think that looking at this collaborative effort is very important. I'm in favor of affordable housing for all who need it. And therefore, I wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. I do hope that there are some projects that we are also looking at for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I don't know yet what the outcome of those projects will be. I hope that this one would not in any way interfere with that. That said, I do think we should look at this collaboration, and I think we should foster additional collaborations with regard to meeting the housing needs of our awesome community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Janet. I do want to, you do have 30 seconds left. So Ms. Hernandez, if you wanted to speak to the question that was posed, if you can at this point, specifically with regard to the ability to hold on to existing service providers, and specifically in the context of the IDD community, if this happens to be a development that has those types of units.
Thank you, Mayor, for the question, and Janet for the question as well. The Office of Supportive Housing has a memorandum of understanding with the San Andreas Regional Center for any property in which we fund that has a set aside of IDD. The Regional Center has committed to providing those critical services, and I'm happy through the City Manager's Office to provide a copy of that MOU. Basically, we enter into this commitment, and then we have a project-specific agreement that details their commitment to services.
Great, thanks so
Great.
much.
Great, thank you.
All right, wonderful. And we'll circle back to Bob Shepard, who has his hand raised again. Bob, let's try to see if we can get you audible here. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it's a technology problem where you might need to reset your device, but we can't hear you. So we will be taking this back to council. And as promised, I wanted to give Supervisor Simidian the opportunity to say a few words, followed by Josh Celo from WVCS. Welcome, Supervisor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No real comments tonight. I just wanted to sit in because I wanted to hear comments and questions from council members and community members and staff, if any. I think you know, Mr. Mayor, this item was preliminarily on our board agenda in late February, as Ms. Hernandez indicated. It was initially slated to be a consent calendar item, and I asked it to come off consent only so that we could sunshine it, make sure everybody was aware of the fact that the board was considering the acquisition of the parcel. The final acquisition and the decision is scheduled for sometime in late March or early April. And I also wanted to make sure that there was every opportunity for your council and Cupertino community members to have this conversation, as preliminary as it may be. I think the one message I want to leave everybody with tonight, after saying thank you for taking the time to talk about the project, is, my commitment is that people will get heard at every step of the way, and people will be clued in at every step of the way. I've worked with Ms. Hernandez in her office. They share that commitment and then some. The one thing I know we can't guarantee is that everybody will be happy with every feature of a final proposal. That's just the nature of it all. But as I said, I wanted to be here to listen and to hear from folks directly, and to assure you and our common constituents that as the conversation continues, it will be just that. It will be a conversation. Folks will be kept in the loop and they will be heard. So thank you for that. And thanks again, everybody who took a little time tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor. Our next speaker is Josh, and I should know this. I pronounced it Celo, but I don't remember if it's Cello. I think it's Celo. Well, Josh, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mayor Paul, our city council members, City Manager Fang, Supervisor Simidian, and Ms. Hernandez from the Office of Supportive Housing. I'm really grateful for all of you for considering this development seriously. A couple of things stand out to me why this is an attractive spot. It's near transportation, both public and highway transportation. It's within walking distance to West Valley Community Services in terms of providing supportive services. And I know there's concern, I've heard these concerns before related to folks hanging around or the impact on the local community. West Valley Community Services has been operating behind the fire station for 20 years. And we fit seamlessly into the community. You would not know unless you knew the brand of West Valley Community Services what goes on there. In fact, I can't tell you the number of people, much to my chagrin, don't realize when they walk by West Valley Community Services that we're an affordable housing development and that we provide a food pantry and all sorts of services from there. I think it can be scary. Affordable housing can feel scary, but it can fit seamlessly and beautifully into a community. For me, what is most attractive about this property is the opportunity for this city council and this community to co-create a vision for affordable housing on that property. It's a feather in the cap of the leadership of this council and the city. And yes, while Supervisor Simidian says not everyone can be happy, we all can be proud that we're offering something that is much needed. I was recently reading the book, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, and I just want to share this very quick one-line quote. A functioning society rests on a web of mutuality, a willingness among all involved to share enough with one another to accomplish what no one person can do alone. I think we have a golden opportunity to work together, city and county and community, to create a really beautiful vision for affordable housing that we couldn't do alone, but we can definitely do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. All right, I'll bring it back to council at this point for any comments and feedback that we'd like to provide to our representative from the County Office of Supportive Housing. First hand up is Councilmember Way.
You know, thank you, Mayor Paul. It's very hard to follow Josh, but what he said really touches my heart. I hope it touches everybody's heart. First, I'd like to thank you, Ms. Hernandez and Supervisor Smedian, to be here and take the time for your thoughtfulness to share this concept with Cupertino City Council and also to our community. And I really want to echo what Josh says. We are going to create something that we're all proud of. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Way. And next we have Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay, hi. So yeah, I really thank you, Supervisor Smedian. And when I heard about the project in Palo Alto a few years back, I was envious that how come we couldn't be in Cupertino, and now we have our chance. Thank you for bringing this project over. And so I think whatever possible concerns, we will figure a way out. But I do want to see that I think many would be concerned about the loss of retail, and that's not a required component for this zoning, I understand. However, that area is probably 2-3 blocks from the nearest retail with a lot of offices, which means customers nearby. So I hope the county could consider maybe putting a convenience store with a cafe with lunch services. And I think this would be great job training site for people who are just trying to get back, and that they would have valuable work experience, and that would provide income for this project also. And then I think a lot of people in our community also hope to have housing for developmentally disabled people, because Cupertino, in fact, is kind of well known for our autism program. So a lot of students, their families move to our community just so their kids can enroll in this program. And these kids are adult, and many of them moved here. I think a lot of them are attending a community college, and they need, their parents would like them to stay in the community. So if this could be a possible use of the site for developmentally disabled people, as you know that we have FCSN, Friends of Children with Special Needs, and they operate a bakery that's staffed by people with mental disability. And so I think it's a beautiful program we could consider. Thank you for bringing this to. I'm hopeful to see how this will be a bright spot for Cupertino. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. I don't have any other hands raised at this point, but now I do. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. So I'm hearing 60 units, and I would like to understand how that number could be arrived at, because we have the 25 dwelling units, and even if we got a 50% density bonus if it is 1.5 acres, I'm only getting to 56 units. And I want to mention that that's using density bonus law, and what we have seen for some of our most recent developments is that they have all been done with housing law. So for instance, Valco had a by right ministerial approval using SB 35 plus density bonus law. And because the site has 1.81 million square feet of office, despite all of the housing that I'd mentioned, for that project, you have 361 very low income units, 840 low income units, and 1,201 moderate units. However, even with that 2,402 units, the project is still leaving about 5,000 employees needing to find housing at another location. So I want to mention that and really bring that home that Valco used a housing law to worsen the housing shortage. The next project was a great one. However, Westport, which I'm referring to, used density bonus law. So you don't really feel as a city that we are having an input on a project when a developer comes in and uses a housing law, and you are then concerned that if you deny it, the city will get sued. So that is the problem there. Now, for this project also, it looks like it's going to need to use density bonus law, and we are again going to like it and have some limited ability to work with it. And so I'm concerned about that, especially when we're looking at not only have we met our entitlements for very low and low income, we've more than doubled them. So we needed very low and low income to provide 563. We have entitled 1,272. What I find exciting about having the county involved with this is that I at least feel that we have the chance that these are actually going to get built. Because while we have 3,457 entitled units, they're not built. So I look forward to seeing that. One issue I have with this location is that its proximity to Apple headquarters, and that you have tech workers who also need housing. It's really close by. There is another very large 1.27 acre property that is in a residential area off of McClellan. And I am curious if you looked at other locations within the city that aren't on such a busy street. There was a comment made about providing for low-income families. When I mentioned the Valco project, all that had were tiny studio and one-bedroom units. All of those, they're about 388 square feet plus and 528 square feet. So they're super small. We haven't been providing low-income housing for families, and that part's really important. And the extremely low-income developmentally disabled component has also been missing. So if you can help us out with that, that would be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Moore. And Councilmember Willie, you're next.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things to be hopeful for with this project. So that being said, along with the amount of support that I think we and our community, which is really who we are, it is great. And so the question that I would ask, kind of ask to the city council, would it help, well, also to Supervisor Simidian and Ms. Hernandez, would it help to have a subcommittee to help that exchange, to help the collaboration, to maybe make it a little bit easier to move through this process where we can bring back to the city council and keep them abreast regularly? And so I toss that out, that it seems like something like this might benefit from that.
Great. Councilmember Willie, does that conclude your remarks, or did you want to say anything in addition to that?
No, that's what I'm asking. I hope we at least discuss it, and if it's not appropriate for this type of endeavor, great. But I'd hate to miss out on an opportunity that might help with this type of project.
Absolutely. And well, let me make my remarks, Councilmember Willie. And I think some of what I have to say briefly does speak to your latest comment. And so let me address that. You know, I think it's certainly a good thing for a city to be ahead of a problem like this, especially with regard to identifying sites that would be, you know, from our local perspective, the most suitable and, you know, able to fit within the various needs. And it's not just a matter of sentiment. It's also a matter of what we see from the perspective of a good inclusionary spot, and also, the various types of services, the tenor of the community in particular locations. And so I would be very supportive of exploring the idea of having some kind of interaction with the Office of Supportive Housing, rather, from the county on a regular basis. We do have a housing commission, and there is a current subcommittee to work with the city council subcommittee on various matters related to housing. But I think that you point out a good idea, and we're certainly looking at our upcoming work plan and trying to figure out, can the public, can the council, can the council's representatives through the housing commission, in terms of gathering feedback from the public, take a more active role in trying to identify proper sites. And so, I also wanted to thank Supervisor Simidian for reaching out to me, early on in this process. Once we got an item on, or once there was an item, I should say, on the County Board of Supervisors agenda, he noted to me that this was on the consent calendar, and I had the first opportunity I've had to take a look at the entirety of a County Board of Supervisors agenda. And if you thought that a Cupertino City Council meeting was long and had a lot of items, well, you haven't seen anything until you've seen one of the County Board of Supervisors agendas. And I believe they start at 9 a.m. By the time we got to around 6 o'clock, I think, we still hadn't gotten to that item yet. And I had to go to a city council meeting for us at that point. And so it was really appreciated that we got that check-in with regard to being able to get our community input. But personally, I think the earlier the better. We want to have this be as collaborative a process as possible. And please, like some people say, vote early and vote often. But in a legitimate fashion, let's communicate early and let's communicate often with regard to what the optimal sites are here. There was, and I agree with everything that council and the public has stated. I think we have a great council and a great public. I agree with the enthusiasm. I agree with the concerns. The only thing I would add substantively is that I think that our city very much encourages fiscal responsibility. And so to the extent that this is possible, I don't know whether the strictures of Measure A allow this, but I think we would get a lot of support for trying to foster owner-occupied units to the extent that we can, we can try to shape this development for that kind of economic planning and advantaging for the people that live there, with a lot of the buy-in and benefits that a sense of ownership has for a particular place. But at this point, I think we've made a tremendous beginning here. I think we have a good amount of input from the public, from our council, and I do want to also thank, in addition to Jean Martyr, Carrie Husler, our staff liaison, who liaises and coordinates a lot of our below market rate housing program from the city's perspective. And so let's have another check-in, when we are able to confirm that the county is looking to go forward with this acquisition. And it's an open invitation. Please interface with us, because it's a matter of trying to identify sites throughout the city and not particularly relegated to certain areas, because of course the affordability issue is something that's not limited to a particular geographic area. So I do have a hand up from Vice Mayor Chow. I don't know if that's artifactual, but Vice Mayor Chow, we do have about half a minute left if you want to put in some final words. And I also see a hand raised from our city manager.
Sorry, just didn't lower it.
Oh, you didn't lower it? Okay. And Deb, did you want to say a few words in closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to call your attention to, I know that the public comment period is closed. However, caller 8697 may be Mr. Shepard calling back in. I don't know.
Okay, but unfortunately, we're only a minute away from
yes.
45.
Understood. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And with that, I will go ahead and close out our special meeting. Thank you everyone for participating, and hopefully we will see, great things, coming from this wonderful seed of an opportunity. All right. Okay, we're at 6:45. Let us go ahead and convene the regular meeting of the Cupertino City Council, having concluded our special meeting and study session. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call for our regular meeting?
Councilmember Moore,
Here.
Councilmember Way,
Here.
Councilmember Willie,
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Here.
Mayor Paul.
And I'm here. Okay, our first item is going to be, and bear with me here, it's a rather long report out on a couple of closed sessions. There was a closed session that was held on March 8, 2021, last Monday, and the closed session item was pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. It was a conference with real property negotiators regarding the property colloquially known as 10455 Torrey Avenue, located at the northwest corner of Torrey Avenue and Pacifica Drive. And our report out from that meeting was that council gave direction to its negotiators regarding price and terms of payment for the potential acquisition of real property. There was no other there was no reportable action, I should say, coming out of that meeting. We also held a follow-up and related special closed session meeting today, prior to our study session this evening. And that was pursuant to Government Code also 54956.8. The description was the same. It was the property colloquially known as 10455 Torrey Avenue. And the report out is as follows. During public comment, the city's planning manager reported that first, at a special planning commission meeting held earlier today, the planning commission determined that the city's acquisition of the property would be exempt from CEQA. And B, the planning commission found pursuant to Government Code Section 65402A that the city's acquisition and use of the property would be in conformance with the city's general plan. The council then authorized the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement for acquisition of the property in the form presented to the council. Key terms of the agreement include, first, the city acquisition of the 0.48 acre property, including an existing 4,715 square foot office building located across the street from Library Field. The property has 20 parking spaces as well as one ADA accessible space. Second, a $4.45 million purchase price with a $100,000 deposit, which shall be applied to the purchase price at closing. Third, a 21-day due diligence period for the city of Cupertino to complete its investigations of the property to its satisfaction. Fourth, the city assumption of existing leases of the property. Fifth, the close of escrow within 30 days after the effective date of the purchase agreement. And then finally, and these aren't all the points, but this is a summary of them. The seller has until 3:00 p.m. Tomorrow to sign the purchase agreement. And because this is prospective and this is typical, the sellers don't typically sign before the buyers do. So as a public process, we receive sign off from our council for me to enter on behalf of the city. If this purchase sale agreement goes through, members of the public may obtain a copy of this PSA signed by the seller upon request. This city council action was taken with the following vote. There was a yes vote from Councilmember Way, Councilmember Willie, Councilmember Moore, Vice Mayor Chow, and myself. And so at this point, if any member of the council wants to make any comment about it, I would be happy to provide that opportunity. And I'm happy to preface it by saying that I think this is a very forward-looking action. I thank our staff for turning this over very quickly. I thank Councilmember Willie for pointing this out. This is, when you compare $4.5 million to potentially $70 million for trying to redesign the entirety of the city hall, plus the fact that in the former you have your own space and property. I very much commend our city council for being able to consider this and turn it around so quickly. I think it has a lot of foresight and vision and good fiscal sense. And again, I think the staff for turning this around relatively quickly. Once again, it is not a finalized sale at this point. We have provided authorization for the city to enter into acquisition of this property, however. Does anyone want to make any comments besides that? I don't see any hands raised, so let me go on to the, I see Councilmember Willie has his hand raised with regard to this. Did you want to say something?
Well, I'll first say everything you said is well said. You're incredibly articulate. Hard to find too much to add to that, except I hope we let the community know that the reason something like this is very important to the city is that the city has grown and our city government has grown, and so the current city hall is really full, more than full, and that's why we were previously considering enlarging City Hall, which requires a complete tear down. This allows breathing room, and it's up to the city manager to decide how to utilize it. But, you know, the city has grown, our city government has grown, and I think this really allows us to continue, you know, so appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. All right, let's go on to ceremonial matters and presentations, which is item 1 on our agenda. And the item is a set of certificates of recognition for the winner and the runner-up of Drafting Cupertino's future essay contest. And we do have a video presentation from one of our members of staff. Madam City Clerk, if you would please introduce and play that.
Yes, Mayor. Daniel Mestizo, our Recreation Coordinator, will be presenting on this item.
Yes.
Oh, Danny, you're live. Great.
Yeah, I'm here. And if I could, if I could ask video to go ahead and share the video. Thank you. Good evening, City Council. I am Daniel Mestizo, a Recreation Coordinator with the city, and I'm here to share the results of the Drafting Cupertino's Future Essay Contest. This contest was open to 7th and 8th graders in Cupertino who were asked to share what they would do if they could improve or change life in Cupertino. While the question was straightforward, participants were asked to provide evidence that supported the community and its ability. The goals of the essay contest were to challenge them to think like city leaders, encourage civic interest, and provide youth an opportunity to share their ideas on improving their community. Our judging panel consisted of the following city commissioners: Nisha Tambe from the Parks and Recreation Commission, Rahul Vashant from the Library Commission, and Rushio Chayan from the Cupertino Teen Commission. Essays were evaluated on 5 criteria: explanations, claims, evidence, organization, and grammar. Without further delay, here are the winners for the essay contest. Our runner-up is Emma Coach, who is a 7th grader at Kennedy Middle School. In her essay, Emma shared her vision for a tutoring program that paired high school volunteers with elementary school students to assist them with schoolwork. Our winner for the essay contest is Victoria Hunt, who is a 7th grader at Miller Middle School. In her essay, Victoria recommended the passing of an ordinance of banning produce bags and charging a 5-cent fee for their use in supermarkets. She argued for using the produce bag funds for more sustainability projects in the city. We would like to thank our participants for sharing their fantastic ideas. our judges who are assisting with the contest, and the Cupertino Rotary Club who donated the award funds for the winners. Thank you for your time, and congratulations to our two winners, Emma and Victoria.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Danny. And we'll now go on to postponements. There is a clerk's announcement, which I'll read, and that's the consideration of a municipal code amendment to adopt changes to Chapter 19.56, the density bonus, previously noticed to be heard tonight, and it is continued to April 6th, 2021. All right, so I'm going to ask leave by the public to allow us to have a 5-minute break before we get to oral communications. And I realize it may seem a little bit irregular right after the beginning, but council has actually been going since 5:15. So I'd like to just give us a few minutes of a break. We'll start at 7 on oral communications. And to set the expectations there, again, with oral communications, as with any members of the public communication, we'll be closing off the list after the first person concludes with that person's remarks. And then there has been a request that we be able to respond to oral communications shortly thereafter. We have made some modifications to the notice under this item. And so, yes, we will be able to do some brief follow-ups. There has been another request to be able to speak to other brief updates. And I will ask council for this meeting to hold that until the end of this meeting, but I will try to make it so that we are able to, I take that back. There is actually a reports by council and staff item after oral communication. So we'll be able to speak briefly to that for a couple of minutes each. So we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in a few minutes. We're now on oral communications, and I don't see any hands raised at this moment, but I do see one now. And I'll repeat the request to have your hand raised if you want to speak during oral communications by the end of the first speaker's comments. Our speakers currently are Rhoda Fry, caller 1, and Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Rhoda.
Sorry, I cannot start my video. The host wouldn't allow me.
Oh, well, I certainly didn't do that.
Yeah, so.
Let me see what can be done here.
Okay.
Ask to start video. Oh, there you go. Welcome, Rhoda.
Hi, I'm Rhoda Fry, and I haven't prepared because I didn't realize I was going to be first. Anyway, I'm very concerned about air pollution from Lehigh. Among California's industrial air polluters, Lehigh ranks number 2 for sulfur, 3 for hydrochloric acid, 4 for PM 2.5, 6 for VOC, 7 for nitrogen, and 10 for hexavalent chromium. Right now, BACMed is actually working on a rule for PM 2.5 for petroleum factories, which is great. But look, we are number 4 in the state for PM 2.5. So we need to implore BACMed to do better. And another concern I have is we're actually getting more pollution than what is reported. Why? Because BACMed only reports the pollution coming out of the stack. Often that's that big smokestack that you see with the little red lights on it. Oftentimes, when the cement kiln starts, excess pollution escapes. This is called fugitive emissions. The problem is they're not being measured. So we need to have what's called on-the-fence testing. This is really important. Now, 2019 was kind of a bad year. And I remember calling BACMed up and say, hey, I'm seeing these fugitive emissions, and yeah, they're getting away into our lungs, and you know, the BACMed.
Sorry, Rhoda, there seems to have been an inadvertent muting of your microphone.
How about that? Am I better now?
Yep, better now.
Okay, so sorry about that. So it turns out that Lehigh has these repairs that are done annually, and around April of 2019, the kiln, because they have this kiln that's fired by petroleum coke, and the flame is at around 2,000 degrees C. super hot, right? So April 2019, production shuts down when the cement kiln actually overheated and became deformed. It turned out, according to Lehigh, that it did at least $1.7 million in damage. How do I know that? It's because they are suing the people who put what they're called the kiln bricks into the kiln. Now, I believe that we wound up getting excess pollution because of this and because there were these issues with the kiln. We need to have disclosure here. We are getting fumigated by this factory, and we need to understand what actually went on with this kiln. And I would implore you to get help with that. That might be another reason why the kiln is down. I know we've been hearing about COVID, but frankly, state of California, the demand for cement actually went up in 2020, not down, and all the other cement plants in the state are operating at employment full capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. And having closed out our first comment, I will announce the list of our 4 additional speakers during oral communications. Those are caller one, that's the designation, Jennifer Griffin, Peter Chu, and William W. Welcome, caller 1. If you're calling in on your phone, I believe you'll need to press, and someone help me out here, it's either *6 or *9.
*9, Mayor.
*9, welcome.
It's *6 to unmute, sorry.
Oh, okay. I apologize, caller 1. You'll need to press *6 to unmute. Okay, caller 1, we'll go back to you if you keep your hand raised, and we're able to unmute you by the end of our remaining speakers, who are Jennifer Griffin, Peter Chu, and William W. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank
Sorry about that, Jennifer. That was my error.
Oh, that's okay, Mayor. Hi, I just wanted to, I really have not seen a lot of information about the state or the county or cities attempting to get their homeless populations vaccinated. My sister-in-law, who's a teacher, actually had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine last week in Modesto, so it appears to be working. They are getting it in, but I think that the Johnson & Johnson would be a perfect vaccine for social services, social workers, etc., doctors associated, to be targeting the homeless populations, the unhoused people that are living in tight community quarters, in shelters, because it is essentially one shot and you're done. There are issues with the homeless population. If they were supposed to be having 2 shots over 6 weeks, like Moderna or Pfizer, how do you get them back in to get the second shot? Do you give them a card like most people that have received both shots, people in my family, they have a card saying that they have received the shot? How do you keep this in the homeless population? Are we going to have to keep a registry of people in the homeless populations that have been inoculated? A lot of those folks probably don't want, it's their privacy issues, but I really have not seen much discussion of this. And I'm really worrying that in the rush to get everyone else vaccinated, that a lot of these folks are falling by the wayside. And all you have to do is go to Guadalupe River Gardens. We used to go there a lot, but that place now has become one giant homeless camp. And it looks tidy and clean, but I sure hope that social workers, City of San Jose, etc., are going out there and trying to start the inoculation process, because these folks they've gone through the 10 months of COVID with us too, and they deserve to get their vaccine. So I have heard no one talking about this. Anyway, I'm just putting a shout out for this. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is perfect for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is Peter Chu. Welcome, Peter.
Could I talk?
On
Is that
mute?
me?
You can hear me, right? Hello, you can hear me now, correct?
Yeah, we'll go to caller one after Peter. Welcome, Peter.
Okay, hi. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. And I have a very short presentation. It's on 5G. I don't want to cover many things we've talked about with many people in the last few meetings, but can we go to the first slide? One of the, I've been talking to many people, and thank you for some of you for referring people to me. I guess I just have a lot of information on hand. The number one common, concern I have is that people don't find out that we actually have this, very massive rollout of 5G in Cupertino until they get a notice, a very, hard to, it's a very indiscreet notice from actually Verizon. So I wanted to use this time just for public service, which is to say, I'm glad that the City Council is putting together a study session on April 20th, which is coming up next month, all about everybody to discuss 5G issues. I hope that there's a way that we can get this message out. I mean, I think it's almost like one by one, I'm letting people know that there is such a session. And I ask you for help to how can we get the word out? Because I'm finding that people are interested if they know something's going on. So if anybody's listening to this, just in the time since I started following this in November, we've had 100 or more 5G cell sites that have been approved. Thank the city. There's a website that we put up in the city's website that has all the locations of where permits are issued. It is on the site. So in fact, I've had to point people to this. So I hope that people now, they know that there is such a resource. Now, this is kind of reactive because it's only once they file for a permit, then we see this. So in just things like people are learning that, our current guidelines, which are guidelines, says that they can put these cell sites within about almost just over 20 feet from residences, right? And can we go to the next page? So I want to take this opportunity to just talk about just my experience in talking to people. People are concerned. And so, in fact, they're putting 4 and 5G combo cell sites. I think in commercial and non-residential districts, they're okay. I've happened to walk by one in November of something that's sitting in front of the Starbucks on De Anza, and you see a person standing, it's over 5 feet tall. But in a commercial zone, I hardly even noticed it with backdrop of Cypress Hotel and so forth. But I think, this is going out everywhere as well. And that surprises people. So I want to point out that, there are many cities I mentioned before. The list is here that are in California that are doing a lot. And I hope that we can at least take some position to follow these other cities who are actually doing ordinances and which we have none. Can we go to the next slide? So I want to be a part of the solution, which is to say, can I ask the city to take more of a proactive role, to take a leadership role? I feel like all of our
15 seconds left.
Residents are very reactive. We get a notice and then we ask the city what's going on. Can we do more informational distribution so that our residents can all find out this is going on in a massive scale?
Thank you, Peter.
I urge you to work to get the information out, and that's my message.
Okay, so we'll go back to caller one now. And caller one, you'll need to press *6 again on your phone.
Okay, dear council and council members and guests in the audience, I think most people probably know me in the communities, Rotary or Toastmaster or any other thing in the ceremonial. And I talked to I talked to most of your council, everyone probably council before. And this matter actually, probably if you guys in our shoes, you would comprehend how this can happen to anyone. And my friends and I have helped the people in situations where cities, for example, somehow they were not contacted, even with the court-validated citation for the code violation in excess of 20 years. There's a little built-up structure and shed in a residential lot, and they were not. They still allow for application of permits for structure used as living quarters, which this one's not, and without any mandate for demolition. In this particular case, all structure was torn down, although originally was built to county and state standards per information provided realtor, and this was belonged to county before not long ago, this residential lot, and rebuilt in good faith. Well, no other cities pushed it for court action for demolition and fine during the pandemic. This city did, and it is not. I think this city don't want to be proclaimed as cruel, and typically you have all these nice council members out there, and particularly there's retaliation against the law. And so we'd like you advocate as much as possible. There's always hatred out there. Even, a lot of people know me. Actually, me and my friends were helping a lot of community people, even try to, in a situation they don't even have the face. We try to get them, get to the, much they can, the city permit, whatever thing is. So we always help to resolve this matter, and we actually to accommodate to get the permit. We put a 4 or 5 application in for this little pay structure. No city in the county and the state, and they are even required. So please work with this and advocate as much as you can. And we're pleading all of you guys and putting you guys in our shoes, and let not push for this action, and let us do the accommodate to get the permit. To have this little in the back, because we're already building twice in a good faith. Okay, thank you so much. This is Jenny for the Huang family. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Our next speaker is William W. Welcome, William.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and all the council member. I hope you guys are having a good evening. I'm just want to speak about, along with what Peter just brought up, how can we collaborate with all these carriers in terms of making a sensible 5G rollout in the city? I live in the Three Oaks Park community, and I believe over the past several weeks that multiple, neighbors within our Three Oaks Park community has spoken regarding the proposed light pole that's going to be installed in the park. And thank you for putting the study session in next month. And as yesterday, we already realized that there are some ground pains that's kind of being marked in the park and the roadside. While we're still kind of trying to work things out with the various carriers, and coincidentally that marking is kind of along where the new proposed light pole is going to be. So it kind of having I'm not sure if I use the right word, a sense of hopelessness right now. This all seems to be just a one-way communication, and like Peter say, if we can look into or maybe urgently put some corners around it and understand how we can, work with these carriers and collaborate with them to make a more sensible role of these, 5G towers or light poles. Because it seems it's, like he said, it's being very reactive, and we only get notified when they're submitting the permit. And, it's not much, options or timeline that we can work with them to understand what could be the alternatives. So, along with that said, right, there's a lot of these approved permit that's shown in the map, but it just is somewhat of can we look into how other cities are doing in terms of their ordinance of certain like 50 feet, 100 feet of setback, so that this doesn't become a right now it's putting the light pole in the middle of the park. It just seems very aesthetically seems to be destructive. And I think in several occasions, the community have, raised the fact that, can we take a deeper look into this? But it seems right now, all the works are ongoing, and we still, kind of, waiting to see what can be done. So, so that's, request to the city council, and to see if we have other alternatives that we can, quickly look into this, so that it does not become a reactive situation, but it's more of a proactive and a collaborative effort to get a more sensible solution out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is our last public comment with a hand up in time. We are now on to reports by council and staff. With leave of council, I'm gonna insert a brief 5-minute item here if anyone wants to provide an update. And this is similar to the council and staff comments and future agenda items at the end of our agenda, because there was a request. And so I'll go ahead and bring that motion forward, that we have a 5-minute opportunity to provide some updates at this point. Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Willie seconds. And again, you know, this is not 5 minutes each. This is 1 minute each. Any care for discussion at this point? Okay, well, let me just say that there are some items that I think on council, frequently we think, well, let's not wait till the very end of the meeting. And if we just have a very brief opportunity to mention it, that will speak to the requirement. And so I'll ask that this be formalized in the next agenda and agendas going forward. But I'd like to, you know, provide that opportunity here. Seeing no comments, are there any public comments with regard to this? I do see one hand up. That was a hand up actually from oral communications. Rahul, if you wanted to speak to this item, I'm gonna unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak if you want.
Yes, hi Mayor. This is Rajul Pandit. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Rajul.
Hi. I think there was some miscommunication. I had my hand up from the beginning. Maybe you didn't see it, but I am here for the oral communication for the 5G, sensible 5G rollout issue.
Sure.
May I please, I'll speak very quickly and very briefly.
Yeah, give me a moment to undo something. So, okay, so I didn't see the caller's hand up, but I'm going to go ahead and take that at face value that the hand was up. So let me ask leave of the seconder for my motion. Can we withdraw that motion for the moment and allow the last oral communication to speak? Would that be all right with you, Councilmember Willie?
Yes, by all means proceed.
Okay, great. So I'll reopen oral communication for Rajul to speak. Welcome, Rajul.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council members, for giving me this opportunity. I am here very quickly to share one piece of news with you, and then I have 1 to 2 questions very quickly. The news I want to share with you, and again, I'm talking about the sensible rollout of 5G, which Peter and the other speakers already spoke before me. The news I wanted to share is there were 3 of us over the weekend. We wanted to gauge awareness and appetite for action. So over the last weekend, in a matter of 72 hours, we just emailed a petition going out just to, kind of gauge the interest amongst Cupertino residents. Believe it or not, Mayor, in 72 hours, we got 140 signatures of Cupertino residents who are extremely sensitive to this 5G sensible rollout issue. So, again, to echo what Peter already said, but people are definitely aware and sensitized and want a very sensible rollout of this. So my question, and every time I look around that petition, the signatures keep increasing. So this is just from 3 of us asking some people around. So I'm sure by the time the study session comes around in April, there'll be a lot more. But my question to the City Council is this: where do we go from here? I know that there is that study session, but my question is there going to be any actionable outcome, or, to a layman like me, how do we get to the ordinance stage? That's all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for being succinct, Rajul, and we'll bring it back over to the next item. And again, that was an opportunity by council to give a brief summary or announcement. There's a motion on the table. I'll put that back on. Councilmember Willie, I assume that you will maintain as a second?
Yes, by all means.
Okay, good. By a show of hands, if anyone would like to discuss this, I don't see any hands up. Madam City Clerk, if you would please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. So just as a reminder, we're bringing council and staff comments up. I didn't actually include staff in it. So with your leave, Madam City Manager, I'll just relegate this to council for a minute each. If there are comments or announcements you'd like to make at this point, any hands up? Councilmember Willie.
Yeah. So, just want to be sure to alert the resident, we're in our work plan process for the next year, and pay attention in the sense that I'm going to be asking for a work plan item for monitoring and tabulating all the resident issues so that we can present them in a more effective way to the carriers and hopefully get more participation from the carriers on our community's concern. So I'll leave it at that for right now.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Willie. And I don't see any other hands up from other members of council. Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand up now.
Okay, yeah. So I'd like to alert the community members that there is a State Bill 9, SB 9 and SB 10 that some community groups have been alerting residents to write letters to the legislators because it might subdivide the single family home into up to 2, 6, and even 8 units. So many people are concerned about gentrification. And second is the ethnic studies model curriculum will be up to vote by the Department of Education on Thursday. It sounds good, but the content being drafted is not ethnic studies, and it's divisive, critical race theory based content. So I hope the community member could be alerted to that. Don't judge.
And you're out of minute, Councilmember Chow, Vice Mayor Chow. All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Moore.
I don't even think I'll use up the whole minute. As you know, I am the chair of the VTA PAC, and Mayor Paul is on the VTA board. Councilmember Willie is on the SR 85 committee, and we have our Public Works Director, Roger Lee, on the TAC. AB 1091 will remove all of the current board and will replace them with appointed residents. And we have already, from the LRC, taken an opposed position on this. And if it moves ahead, you will end up having assembly members from across the state deciding on the leadership of the VTA, and we will lose quite a lot of what we've been gaining over the past few years for influence on it for VTA, and that will be pretty devastating for us.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Moore. You're right at 1 minute. And Councilmember Way.
So I just like to inform the residents that there are a lot of information on our city website. So maybe sometimes it's good to pay attention to it and browse through it. And also there is a notice that's sent to everybody that PG&E, we're gonna start a new rate as of June. So if you wanna keep your own rate schedule, you need to return something. If you don't do it, then you will get the new rate. So keep read your postcards. That's what I would tell the residents. Don't throw them away. There are lots of good information on it.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Way. All right, I don't have any announcements here, and so we'll go on to our next item, which is our reports by council and staff. Item number 2 is our city managers providing an update on emergency response efforts. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my report this week relatively short. Santa Clara County is still in the red tier, moving towards orange, but still in the red tier. And we are reopening per state guidelines. I say that because there's no difference between state and county guidelines these days. Vaccine status. Vaccines are still in short supply. However, the county will soon expand vaccines to those that are 16 years of age or older with a secondary health condition or what they call a comorbidity. There is some misinformation out there that the county or somebody will ask you to provide proof of that secondary health issue, but they are only going to be asking for your attestation, or basically saying I have a secondary health condition. Testing continues to monitor the case rate. There's another testing opportunity tomorrow at the Senior Center between 9:30 and 3:45. No need to be a senior in order to get tested. And again, a reminder, testing helps us monitor the case rate so we can actually get into the next tier. And there are plenty of appointments available. In Cupertino, there are 812 cases by zip code and 823 cases by city as of today. The last time I reported, which was the last city council meeting, was 804 cases and 815 cases, relatively speaking. This is an increase of approximately 7 cases in the past 2 weeks. And I only bring that up because that means it's a very huge slowing down since the last case rate reduction. So we're on a downward slope, which is good, and it's becoming even steeper, which is also good news. And that is the end of my report for this council meeting.
Great, thank you, Deb. And I see Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand up. Would you like to go first on our report outs from our committee assignments?
Sorry, that's a leftover, but I'm glad to go. I'm happy to go first. So the committee assignment on the 11th of March, we had the Cities Association meeting, and nothing much, but then the Cities Association are forming subcommittees to do on certain issues, and there are still openings for the transportation and COVID committee that any council member can sign up for, even if you are not a rep of the city. And then on the 12th of March, we had the Legislative Review Committee meeting. We have taken watch positions on a few bills, and then we have taken some other positions. The next meeting will be in May, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Would anyone like to go next on reporting out on our formal committee assignments? Councilmember Wei.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So on March 3rd, I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy's Audit Committee meeting. I was elected Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm very happy to report that the auditor reported a very clean audit with no findings and no recommendations. So Silicon Valley Clean Energy is doing a great job. And March 5th, I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy's orientation session, number 1 of new board members workshop. It was a very informing session. I learned all about Electricity 101, portfolio planning management, energy market, participants and products, California grid, Silicon Valley's power content, and reliability and resource adequacy. So there is a lot to learn, and I'm very amazed at how Silicon Valley Clean Energy, runs so well and looking to the future. So we're in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Wei. We have Councilmember Willie next.
Yeah, I'll do a follow-on to Councilman Wei, and that is on the 10th, we had the monthly Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and we authorized our CEO to enter into a power supply agreement with Angola East, which will give 20 megawatts of solar power to our power supply, along with 10 megawatts of storage. And that allows us to be more effective during the peak times, and also the solar is only being absorbed and put out during the sunny times of the day. So it's very effective when we combine it with the solar. So that adds that much more power that is renewable. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. Our next report out is from Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. So on March 11th, we had the VTA PAC meeting. We pulled a couple of items off of consent agenda. One was an action item to recommend that the VTA Board of Directors adopt the fiscal years 2020 and 2021 modifications for the Measure 2016 Measure B Highway Interchange Program category. That one was interesting because now 82% of the interchange improvement money for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 going to San Jose, and I pointed that out. I'll be pointing that out again when I go speak in front of the board to give them a summary. And then we also pulled the 2000 Measure A Transit Improvement Program semi-annual report. That one we're asking, the request is that we have what's called a placemat, which is to provide more summary information for us to have at our fingertips during the meeting, because in Measure A, you have BART Phase 2 funding, and I've asked to have more information to come back to us to educate us, because we have an overlap of funding, it looks like, from Measure A and Measure B, and we want to understand how those work together. We also brought up under our regular agenda action item to approve the 2016 Measure B 10-year program and biennial budget principles and project readiness and prioritization criteria. What we brought up there that was significant was the financing issue and whether or not the BART extension financing would be above and beyond the 25% that they are allocated in Measure B. So we are keeping after that, and we want to get a real solid answer. And lastly, we had something pretty fun for us. We had an update on their Central Bikeway Study Alignment alternatives and outreach up to date. So they had 3 alternatives for protected bike lanes, which would start in East San Jose and extend through Santa Clara, and we made our comments on that, and it was actually pretty fun. They had a new category of input, which was joy, and we made our comments about whether or not we thought some of these routes would bring us joy or not. So it was actually a really nice way to close the meeting. And then on the 12th, I was on the LRC with the Vice Mayor and bringing up again, looking at AB 1091 and our concern there. So keep that in mind moving forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. I remarkably don't have any formal assignments to report out on from our last meeting. So we'll move on to our consent calendar, which is items number 4 through 13. Before I ask if any council member or member of the public would like to pull an item on consent, I will pull item number 4. Would anyone like to pull an item from our consent calendar? I see Councilmember Moore, your hand is still up.
Yes, intentionally. I'd like to pull item 11 also, and I agree with number 4.
Okay, great. So we have items 4 and 11 pulled. Would anyone else like to pull an item from consent? Let us go ahead. I don't see any members of the public with their hands up, so I'm going to.
Mayor,
yes.
You have a presentation for item number 7 that was submitted to me, Friendship City.
Oh, but that is not a request to pull the item. Is that correct?
Well, it's on the consent calendar, so.
Right. So why don't we do this? Is it a video presentation or is it a written presentation?
It's a video and a PowerPoint slide.
Can you make, because this is a renewal of a Friendship City relationship, yes. Can you make this material available on the materials that you publish after the meeting?
Certainly. I believe they wanted to speak though, but I don't see their hand raised.
Right, but again, this has not been pulled off consent by any member of council.
So they did just raise their hand.
Okay, so I do see a member of the public. We have Wayne Lim. Welcome. Would you like to pull item 7 off the consent calendar?
Okay. I would like to to show the videos only.
Okay. Well, let's follow process here. I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yes.
That you do want to pull that off consent calendar. So, okay, we'll get back to you once we get to that item. May I have a motion for items 5, 6, 8 through 10, and 12 and 13?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and move to accept the consent calendar with the exception of 4, 7, and 11.
Great. Is there a second? Councilmember Way seconds, correct? That's Councilmember Way, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
You seconded? Okay, great. Any discussion on the consent calendar items? Madam City Clerk, if you would please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Way,
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so let me kick us off on item number 4, and I hope we can make this brief. The only reason I pulled off item 4 is that there was one part of it that wasn't followed up in accordance with the motion that I made last time, which was to remove the entirety of the section that was labeled work plan, something or the other. It was the next to last section of the draft minutes. And so what I would like to do is to move that we asked our city clerk to bring this back again in our next, because I want a clean copy of this for the draft minutes for the public. So I would just like to ask one clean copy. We don't need red lines, just as amended, and adopting the red lines that that our city clerk indicated, because there were a couple of items related to the bike rack to clean up the terminology throughout the minutes that she had modified. And so you see that in the red line, my motion is to bring this back in a clean copy without this. I just don't want this language in our minutes because it was not something that we considered, and I don't want it reflected in the record that we approved. So can I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, great.
I would, Mayor Paul, I'd like to make a comment. When we get to the March 2nd meeting minutes, it appears that their item 7, which was the subject of the February 6th City Council minutes, it does appear that was captured quite accurately what the final motion was. So I just want to point out that that was there correctly. So I'm a little surprised that to see this the minutes in this condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I don't see any members of the public with their hands raised, and so if there are no further comments on this motion, may I ask for a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Way.
Aye.
Councilmember Willie.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Our next item is item number 7. The subject is the consideration of the renewal of a couple of Friendship City relationships. I see our communications director, Brian Babcock, has turned on his camera. Brian, did you want to give us a brief summary of this item before introducing the members of the public?
Sure, very brief. Before you tonight is the renewal of 2 Friendship Cities, and that is for Taichung and Yilan. And tonight, I believe you have Winnie from Taichung who would like to just show you a very brief video regarding what they've accomplished over the last year.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Babcock. And we will go ahead and go to our members of the public. There is nobody with a hand raised, but as our city clerk had indicated, there is a video that the members of the public who pulled this item want to share. Is that ready to be presented here?
Yes, Mayor, I will. They presented slides as well, but I will play the video. The video is actually 2 minutes, so.
Okay. Great. I don't see any members of the public with their hands raised at this point. And so I'll bring this back to move the recommended action, which is to approve the renewal of friendship city relationships with Taichung and Elan. Would anyone like to move that item?
I will move.
Oh, I hear Councilmember Willie moving. Would anyone like to second?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second.
Vice Mayor Chow seconds. Okay, great. If there's no further discussion, I'd be happy to call for a roll call vote. All right, let's conduct a roll call vote, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. So we are now on item number 11. The subject is accepting, or consider acceptance, I should say, the accounts payable for the period ending January 31st, 2021. So to clarify, that would be the week ending January 31st, 2021. And Councilmember Moore, I believe you pulled this, and so would you like to make some remarks about this before consideration?
Sure. Let's see. Oh, I am unmuted. Great. So compared to the other accounts payable, this payment register does not have the descriptors like the other ones did. And so for that reason, I personally am reluctant to move this item. And I'd like to bring that up and perhaps have a comparison shown of this item 11 accounts payable report versus any of the other ones, I should say.
Okay. I don't know. Am I muted here?
No, you're.
Okay, yes, I'm trying to pull up items 10 and 11 for the AP. You're talking about the AP report, correct?
Correct.
Exhibit B on each of these. Okay, so let me try to pull up items 10 and 11. Okay, so I will go ahead and share my screen. This is items 10 accounts payable report. All right, let me maximize this first. Share screen, I think.
And really, if you, Mayor Paul, if you find it to be as I'm stating, then I would like to have this moved, to have it come back to us with the descriptors in there, so we have uniformity.
Oh, sure. I just, this is first impression for me, so let me just see what you're talking about, or let all of us see what you're talking about. So this is item 10, the week ending, I believe it was January 25th. Okay, and so let me stop the share and then go over to item 11 and see how that looks. All right, and I guess, was there a particular part of this, a particular column? I see void reason, reconciled voided date, reconciled amount, and difference.
Okay.
Those are the items you were looking at? And then again, for comparison's sake, I guess. Okay, so can you see, I actually moved over to item 10s. I apologize, I don't know what's being shared, whether it's Adobe Acrobat or that particular file.
It's Adobe Acrobat. You're showing item 10, and if you could scroll down, you'll see that each item has a description of what was being paid for, the payment register. Okay.
Under the payment, okay. Well, so here's item 11. It looks like, okay. Well, let's let our Director of Finance speak to this. I see that Christina is here. Welcome, Director Alfaro. Did you want to maybe help clarify this for us?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So it looks like we just attached the wrong report. Generally, we attach the accounts payable version that has a descriptor. So it just gives a little more information about what's being purchased. So my staff and I can bring back that report with the appropriate attachment to it at the next council meeting.
Great. So if it's satisfactory, then let's let's hold over item number 11 until we have that consistent report for the public. Does that work for staff, Director Alfaro?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm a few years removed from scrutinizing all of these, reports line by line. I know that was, quite the meticulous exercise. And I'm very glad that Councilmember Moore and Vice Mayor Chow are now on our audit committee to be able to, examine the city's finances in that regard as well. So, yeah, if that's amenable to everyone, let's go ahead and continue that item to our next council meeting. And I don't see any members of the public with their hands raised or council members on this item. So that being the case, we'll move on to item number 14, and that falls under second reading of ordinances. This is public hearings. Item number 14, subject is a set of municipal code amendments to adopt glazing and lighting regulations to implement the fiscal year 1920 City Council Work Program items related to dark sky and bird safe design. And so I want to thank our city staff members who have spent a good amount of time working on this and going back and hopefully honing and perfecting our presentation and recommendations to the public and council. I see Eric Serrano with his video available. Eric, did you want to provide the staff report on this?
Yes, Mayor, I will provide the staff report. So showing my screen. Okay. All right, am I good? Everyone can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, sorry, clicked before because of new thing. So yes, I'll be presenting on the bird safe and dark sky item this evening. In attendance, I also have Hugos, who's our planning manager, and the city attorney's office. We have Sarah Clark, who's been very helpful with the ordinance. So some background on the ordinance. This is part of the fiscal 1920 council work program item. So we've done a series of community meetings last year in February. We've had public hearings for this through council and through planning commission. We've had a series of one-on-one meetings with members of the public. We've also attended the economic development committee, legislative action committee. We've done several other things in terms of just outreach for this project. So we do have a couple of options for council to consider tonight. So you can conduct the first reading of the bird safe and dark sky ordinance. It would be essentially a brand new ordinance. Or you can conduct the second reading for the bird safe only ordinance number 21219, and conduct the first reading for dark sky regulations incorporating the bird safe ordinance as it was previously heard. So one of the things that we heard a lot of comments between the January 19th meeting and now is some question about the applicability. So in the December 15th draft, there was a language included to exempt R1 homes outside of bird sensitive areas, but council removed that provision from the ordinance. So several members of the public have raised some concern over that. Attachment A, the brand new, or not brand new ordinance, but the first reading of the ordinance does reintroduce that exemption, which would exempt R1 residences outside of bird sensitive areas. And we've defined bird sensitive areas means that parcels that are in or within 300 feet of the wildland urban interface, within 300 feet of water courses, residential hillside areas, within 300 feet of public and private open spaces and parks that are dominated by vegetation, including vegetated landscaping, forests, meadows, grasslands, and so this is just a draft that we've prepared for the meeting tonight. We'll hone in on this a little bit more, but this is just something to show to the council and to the public as to what this could potentially look like. Alternatively, council could consider adopting screening criteria, which would screen out certain window sizes. So the following would be considered treated glass for purposes of the calculations in subsections A and B. Windows that are 12 square feet or less, or windows that are 12 square feet or less, and windows that are entirely blocked or impeded by another building wall within 10 feet. So there's just another alternative, a way to screen out projects, particularly R1, our single family residences. Another comment was, what do these treatments look like? So we prepared an attachment. Attachment E shows acceptable bird safe treatments. There's also some concern over the cost of the bird safe treatments. In conversations with different vendors, we see a 2.5 to 5% increase on curtain wall costs. This does vary quite a bit by the project, manufacturer, type of window, number of windows, that kind of stuff. We would like to note that there are alternative methods of compliance that a project could propose if they provide documentation from a qualified biologist to meet the requirement. Another item that was brought to us was commercial versus residential. So there was a concern regarding exempting commercial storefronts up to a 15-foot height. You could exempt R1 properties out of bird-sensitive areas and or add additional screening criteria that we mentioned earlier. Or council could just eliminate the commercial exemption as well. We don't recommend that for economic purposes to kind of help the local economy and commercial frontages. So that was one item that was of concern. Another item was existing non-conforming. So there, a lot of questions have been asked. So will this apply backwards or to an existing project? It does not, as long as it's within the confines of the non-conforming chapter. So an existing light fixture, an existing window would still continue its non-conformity, provided that it doesn't, it's not willfully damaged or willfully replaced. We also made some clarifying edits based on a letter from the chamber that was included in the packet. So we allowed for a licensed professional who is qualified to prepare outdoor lighting to prepare the necessary drawings. Previously had just indicated electrical engineers. Illumination levels have been clarified to apply only to exterior lighting. Clarification on illumination standards for service station canopies. We have deferred to the building code if any conflicts arise, and we just worked through the ordinance to clarify some ambiguities. These are the several exemptions which the project could be exempt by. I'm not going to read them all, but we previously discussed them before, but it's 1530 is being adopted to ensure maintenance, restoration, enhancement, or protection of the environment. 1501 regulations will not result in expansion of use, and they continue through. So in the normal noticing requirements and outreach, legal ad placed in the newspaper, display ad placed in the newspaper as well as a posting on the city's website and bulletin board. So here is the first recommended action: conduct the first public hearing and conduct the first reading for the ordinance. Again, this is the attachment A ordinance. Alternatively, conduct the public hearing and do the second reading of the bird safe ordinance, and then the first reading of the dark sky with the bird safe ordinance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any other presentations from staff with regard to this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No? Oh, thank you very much. Let me take it over to our council if there are any questions of staff with regard to the presentation or other questions on this topic. I don't see any hands raised from council, which is Councilmember Moore, and then followed by Councilmember Way. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, looking at the actual, the combined ordinance, page 55, item 2, illumination levels, item 2B, C, and D. I would like to have those explained.
B, C, and D?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so item B, or 2B, is referencing to the light source shall not be visible for 3 feet at the public right-of-way. Essentially, or I should say the glare from the light source shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. Basically, 3 foot is kind of where you're sitting in a car, and the idea is so that that glare isn't hitting you when you're walking or driving or anything like that. So the maximum light intensity shall not exceed a maintained value of 10-foot candles when measured at finished grade. So basically, it sets the light level that would be maintained for a light source or a light or a lighting plan. That it just says a kind of a cap at it.
So for D, it's I and, well, 1 and 2.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm just reading and make sure I understand it correctly. Average or horizontal. No, I have this on my notes. Sorry. So average horizontal maintained illuminance shall be between 1 and 3 foot candles, but shall not be more than 3 foot candles. So it provides a uniform intensity or an intensity throughout an area. So horizontal, I'm sorry, I am just.
Let me just, for the benefit of council and the public, which, are we looking at the ordinance? Because I thought I heard Councilmember Moore reference at page 55, but when I open up the ordinance, which is 14A, I only see 30 some odd pages. Oh, there we go. Okay, so whoever's sharing the screen, if we can just take a look at the language that is being, great, thank you.
Sorry, I just have too many windows open. So horizontal measurement is known as the amount of light that lands on a horizontal surface. So essentially the light that hits the floor. So it'd be between 1 and 3 foot candles. Maximum to minimum ratio should be 6 to 1 to 10 to 1. Thinking of 6 to 1 to 10 to 1, it's the higher the ratio, the kind of blottier it gets. So 6 to 1 is kind of more, how I would describe it. It's, you have a lower ratio, it's kind of a spreader out of light fixtures. A higher ratio is, oh no, reverse. A lower ratio would have more light fixtures, and a higher ratio would have less light fixtures. I can kind of show you a picture of what that would look like.
Okay. And this requires a lighting expert who's going to be making essentially the plot plan of the lumens.
Yeah, it would require them to do it. Yeah, but essentially what it looks like when it's a 10 to 1, it's kind of has a little bit more, not gaps, but a little kind of dims in between the light fixtures, and like a 6 to 1 would kind of have a more lighting in between the light fixtures.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Moore. And we also have Councilmember Way with.
Yeah, I'll ask a couple quick questions and leave the discussion to her. One of the question is, it says qualified biologist. Do we have locally qualified biologists that's available? I just want to make sure that, this is doable.
Yeah, we've used qualified biologists for, all our CEQA documents. There's always reference to a qualified biologist. You can kind of Google a qualified biologist, but we've used them in the past for different projects, but they are available.
Okay.
Should they propose an alternative? I think that's in reference to an alternative compliance with the class treatment.
Okay, so the city might recommend people so that when people apply, they can have resources, right? The other one, the same question, it says the method shall be peer reviewed by a third-party consultant. I just want to make sure that the consultant is ready and available too for the residents or businesses who needs to do this.
I can answer that. We generally have, third-party consulting, arborists, environmental consultants, things like that on call. And so we would create such a list for the biologists as well.
That's great. So there's resources. The other one is, I just want to clarify, in lieu of adopting the exemption for the R1 out of the birth sensitive areas, there is another method. There's either a screening method or a proposed like window. So there are ways we can, if we want to. Okay, so there are alternative ways, right? Because this is the first time I heard about it.
Yeah, so the screening method was actually presented to the Planning Commission in the first draft of the ordinance that was presented to them. But at that time, the Planning Commission rejected that as being too confusing, and therefore staff then recommended the bird sensitive areas definition, and that use that as a screening method for applicability of the bird safe treatments.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Wei. I see Vice Mayor Chow has her hand up.
Yeah, okay, so just want to confirm that, so right now, residential homes, first floor are exempt, except in the bird sensitive area.
No, for birds, only properties that are outside of the bird sensitive areas would be exempt. R1 properties outside of the bird sensitive.
Yeah, outside. So,
yes.
So,
but not first floors of any single family home, just it would be exempt altogether.
I mean, so R1 outside of bird sensitive.
Correct.
Area,
yes, that's right.
Exempt first or second floor. Yeah, I think,
that's right.
Okay, good. And then in terms of commercial, we are exempting the first storefront. Does that mean non-retail commercial building will not have the exemption? So it's only storefront of a retail establishment.
Commercial storefront includes retail and other kinds of commercial businesses as well. So not just retail. And I'm trying to go back to the language to make sure that, yeah, so that would include all kinds of commercial, not just retail. It's not limited to that.
It might be an office building.
Correct.
That consider storefront, even though there's no store.
No. So if you're an office use within a commercial property, you would be exempt, but not necessarily an office building, a standalone office building. So in general commercial zones, a certain portion of that property could also be used for offices. For example, I don't know, travel agent. I keep coming back to this. Travel agencies, banks, or things like that. They can occupy certain portions of general commercial zones, and so those buildings might be exempt. But if you're a standalone office building, this does not apply to them.
Okay, so, but how about? So we're talking about only storefront, and the side window won't be exempt, right? It's only front. But if their entrance is on the side, then that's not considered storefront.
Correct.
Only the storefront facing, say, Stevens Creek, or the parking area of a shopping mall.
Correct.
Considered storefront. Okay. Yeah. So is that clear in our zone code? I think we have a public comment email on that.
So the public comment was to clarify this, to say for storefront displays. I believe that was the comment from Ms. Griffin.
Yeah.
That does not in here in the draft. We only received that comment today.
Yeah.
But that is up to the council if they wish to make that amendment. We'll be happy to wrap that in.
Oh wait, I thought her comment is just concerned that want to clarify first. Commercial storefront applies to the retail storefront. It seems you have confirmed that's the case. Do we need to amend to?
It could always be clearer.
Oh, okay. So but we don't have this really defined storefront defined anywhere else in the code.
I do not believe so, but we'll look that up in just a second.
And then the Audubon Society submitted 3 comments. I wonder, should I ask the staff comment about those 3 recommendations now, or do I do it after in the deliberation?
If you have questions now, please feel free to ask them.
Okay, so one of them is about the requirement that parking lot to have uniform lighting. And I think they are concerned that's creating a minimum lighting requirement that might trespass to neighboring properties. So,
I can try to answer that. The minimum lighting is mainly for security purposes. We can certainly go lower in terms of foot candles, but because that was an existing standard in the city's municipal code, staff was recommending to continue to use that. But it is my understanding based on research that the minimum lighting standards could go below the 1. Currently it is between 1 and 3-foot candles, I believe. And I believe you could go down to as low as 0.5.
So, okay, yeah, so they are recommending 0.5. So I think the idea of an ordinance is the minimum. We want to have this, right? And so trying to say it has to be uniform seems to be asking too much. That means every area of a parking lot have to be uniformly lit.
That is from a security perspective, from a personal safety and security perspective, having uniform lighting would certainly help. And that has been the city's focus in terms of maintaining that lighting standard. However, you know, that is certainly something that the council could provide direction on.
Is that in our existing code or is this new that's added here?
That is in the existing code.
That we require uniform light.
Correct.
Okay. I think Audubon's recommendation is not to require that because each establishment will provide adequate lighting for safety purpose anyway. Okay, something to consider now.
That is certainly something that the council could look at.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. We have Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that I caught this right. So the new combined ordinance exempts the R1 outside of the bird safe area, whereas the second reading of the separate bird safe includes all residential. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, great for asking that clarifying question. Thank you. I do see still a couple hands up, but I think Vice Mayor Chow's yours might be artifactual and Councilmember Moore's just went back up again. Councilmember Wade, did you have any questions? I want to give you that opportunity to ask if you had any. No?
Mayor Paul, you're asking me?
Yeah, did you have any questions before I circle back?
Questions already. I'm going to wait for deliberation.
Okay, great. And Councilmember Moore, your hand is up again.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, is there some way that we can have a one-year check-in to see how this ordinance has been going and get some feedback from people who are needing to comply with it? I think you did something like that for the off-leash dog park.
I'm sure that's something that we could look into. I guess it depends on how many projects we get that would have to comply with this. But sure, we could check in after a year once it goes into effect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm trying something out, hopefully to help move our meetings along in an ever more efficient and effective manner. And I do want to thank the members of the public that made this request to pool their time together. So typically we have 3 minutes for each public comment with leave to myself to try to regulate according to how much time we have. But what I would like to do is to provide people an opportunity to pool their time together in case they wanted to make something of a longer presentation. And essentially the trade-off to that would be if you're pooling, then you put in 2 minutes and you don't have that additional time later. And I think it's not to cut off the time, it's to incentivize to provide the ability to make a longer type of presentation. And also, you know, if it goes up to the maximum, which I'll set at 10 minutes, if there are, say, 20 people who have very similar sentiments, it would be much appreciated, I'm sure, by everybody if everyone would simply pool all that time together. So just to kind of, formalize it, because we did work together with the city attorney's office to come up with some language. This might make it into our future agendas if it works out well tonight. It would go something like this. Public comment may be pooled for up to 10 minutes total, with each person able to contribute up to 2 minutes towards the pooled time. Pool time may be utilized by any speaker or speakers in the pool, but people joining the pool cannot speak outside of the pool time. an unlimited number of people may lend their names to a pool if the sentiments expressed there align with their own. So, hopefully that is effective. And I'd like to thank our first 5 speakers from what I could see in their request to our city clerk last week. I kind of kicked off this process of trying to consider how we would go about doing this. And the names that I have from our city clerk's office are Dr. Shani Kleinhaus, Linda Ruthruff, Margaret Hinnebog, Keith Wandry, Lisa Karpinski, and Bob Hurt, which I believe at least 5 are present here. And so I'm going to go ahead and allocate 10 minutes for this. And of course, if there are any other hands up at this point that would like to join in the sentiments expressed within the presentation, I'm sure we would all be very happy to take that under consideration. So again, this is a rather long presentation, but by the end of this 10 minutes, we're going to be taking the cutoff for hands raised. And so welcome group, and you have 10 minutes. And who should I'll be allowing Dr. Kleinhaus to talk, and let me know if someone else should be talking. Well, welcome, Shani. Okay, unfortunately, we're not getting audio. It might be a similar kind of situation. Let me try to see if we can take another person from that group, and I'll just allow the next person down on the list, Lisa Karpinski, if you can unmute yourself to see if your microphone.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I am. I definitely am ceding my time to Shani. And she is definitely planning to attend and is on. So I'm assuming she's having some kind of audio problem. I don't know if you can. I mean, I can just text her and make sure she's able to.
Yeah, I'm assuming that Shani is following along. Let's go ahead and go to our next speaker, and then perhaps that'll give time to reset a device if that's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
So our next 3 speakers are Jill Halloran, Dashiell Leeds, and Rick Kitson. Welcome, Jill.
Here I am, yeah. And actually my only thing that I had to say was that I was going to cede my time to Shani, Dr. Kleinhaus as well, so.
Okay, well that's very appropriate because we're still ticking down on the 10 minute.
Okay.
So let me just ask our video control room to reset it to the 3-minute timer since we're going to go to, we'll circle back to Dr. Kleinhaus
Thank you.
after the next speaker. So our next speaker is Dashiell Leeds. Welcome, Dashiell.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Conservation Assistant with the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. We're in strong support of the combined ordinance tonight. I think that staff has done a great job on this, and we really hope that City Council moves forward with the first reading of the combined ordinance tonight. We did send in a joint letter with the Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society, and I'll go through a few brief modifications that we'd like to see. We think these can be pretty easily corrected. First of all, we're totally fine with the inclusion of the exemption for residential R1 zoning outside of bird-sensitive areas. That's fine, and we think it's actually preferable to the screening criteria. We agree with staff that the alternative could be more complicated. In terms of the edits we'd love to see, regarding the outdoor lighting requirements, so that's 19.102.040 B to A. We really hope that the 1 foot candle requirement is revised from 1 to 0.5. Light trespass is one of the primary complaints we've heard from residents, and 1 foot candle alone is about 100 times brighter than the full moon, which is very light, especially regarding light trespass. This is the 0.5 foot candle is in line with ordinances such as those from Portland, Oregon, which limit light trespass to 0.5 foot candles. We also hope that regarding Section D of that same section, that you remove the word uniform. And our main concern was that with the uniform requirement, it would require lighting up until the edge of the property, which could result in light trespass and could maybe result in some excessive lighting. So that's why we recommended removing the word uniform. But if a lighting minimum were to be adjusted to 0.5 foot candles, I think that would become less of an issue. In our letter, we mentioned in a few areas. So again, that's section 19.124.040 A and C. I actually see that I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go through each of the individual requests here. I see I'm running out of time. But in general, our comments were in the sections of the ordinance where there are lighting minimums. We would hope for those minimums not to be established. We think this is contrary to the intent of the dark sky ordinance, which should be to set an upper boundary for lighting, not a lower boundary. However, if you wish to establish a minimum of 0.5 foot candles, we believe that is adequate. So thank you so much for your excellent work, and we hope you pass this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dashel. Our next speaker is Rick Kitson, and then we'll try to go back to the group. Welcome, Rick.
Unmute. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. Rick Kitson with the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. Glad to speak in support of the measure before you this evening. As mentioned by some of the council members earlier and by the Sierra Club, we support the modifications that they have identified, which we also identified in our very long list of concerns. One of our underlying motivations is that these changes in this ordinance actually work. It accomplished the goal to which we would all need it to accomplish. And so I would speak very much in favor of the proposed idea by Councilmember Moore that we revisit this to make sure that we are in fact accomplishing what it is we intend to accomplish with this measure. So thank you very much. Thank you to staff and the community groups that have worked so hard on making this happen. And I'm sure we will have a much more environmentally sustainable community as we move ahead.
Great, thank you, Rick, and thank you for your conciseness. And we will now go to our group, comprised, I believe, of Shani Kleinhaus, Lisa Karpinski, Robert Hurt, Margaret Hinnebach, and Linda Ruthruff. Welcome, Dr. Kleinhaus.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and council member. I hope my internet disconnect.
You are
on. Thank you. We have a little presentation for you, and I'm really sorry about this. We have also other people on the call that are with our group, and maybe they could potentially lower their hand. Juliana, Carolyn, Mackenzie, I can't even remember all the others. If you want to lower your hand, that's okay. You don't have to speak. We'll try to be concise. So birds are connected to higher happiness levels, equivalent to higher income, apparently, in Europe. This is a recent study that was published in the World Economic Forum. Next slide. And I wanted to give you in this discussion two things. One is a little information about recent availability of bird-safe design solutions. The American Bird Conservancy just released a new website which has architectural planning, home and existing buildings, how to plan for bird safety, but also they have a database, next slide, that allows you to choose whether it is a home or a business or an office that you want to apply bird safe design, and they have dozens and dozens of products that the person can go choose and get to the website where it starts. So there are a lot of options is what I wanted to show you next. I want to show you what our Bay Area looks at night. This is a picture of the Bay Area taken from satellite. You can see that light is bright and it disrupts biological function in all living things, and humans are no exceptions. And the next couple of slides will show that. Next. So what animals respond to is daily and seasonal changes. That is not only animals and plants, but also people. And also there's attraction to light, which can be very, very damaging to insects, birds, even fish. And so let's go on to the next one. So these are just recent, more or less recent publications from scientific journals, not out of the internet, Facebook or whatever, that show that light pollution can suppress melatonin production in humans and animals. The light pollution is implicated in the disappearance of insects on our planet, that it interferes with sleep in a lot of different animals, not only people. And even things that we don't really expect, who would have thunk that light pollution may increase biting behavior of Aedes mosquitoes, which transmit West Nile disease. So this is kind of interesting to me, being a little scientist and geeky. Next. Other studies show really strong linkage to prostate and breast cancer. The studies that show linkage of light at night on the outdoors to breast and prostate cancer started coming out about 10 years ago. The latest that I found was from 2018, and it concluded that both prostate and breast cancer are associated with high estimated exposure to outdoor artificial light at night in the blue enriched light spectrum, which is light that is relatively white. Next. And these are the most recent two articles that I found that came out really like last month. One of them shows linkage between light pollution to premature birth. And the other one shows that living near a streetlight could increase risk of thyroid cancer by 55%. This study was done on over 200,000 people. It's not a minor little anecdotal study. And it really shows how dangerous light pollution is to our society and why it is so important to reduce the amount of lighting in general and light pollution, which is the light that we just use and don't really need for a purpose in particular. Next. So there are recommendations that staff included a lot of this in their ordinance, which as expressed by Dash, we support, and now I ran out of my other. So generally the advice that is given is use only as much light as you need, not more than you need. And the question of whether you want 3-foot candles or one comes in here, because 3-foot candle is 300 times the amount of light that the full moon produces. So why don't you do less than that? We don't really need that much light in our environment. And actually the suggestion that staff made earlier of maybe only half a candle foot, is a good suggestion for a parking lot. We don't need the light to be that bright. And I'll refer to that a little later. It says, use it only when you need it, only as much as you need it, shield the light, direct them down. That doesn't protect frogs, but it protects the birds in the sky. Use light when you need it by using timers or light sensors. Choose warm light. As I showed, the white light is the more damaging to our biological systems. And keep the light on your own property and don't let it spill over to other properties. Next. And this is really the interesting thing that I read. And I think this is something that we really need to consider in terms of light pollution. In Tucson in 2019, they did an experiment in spring about this time of year, where they dimmed for 10 days or so, they dimmed the light at the brightness of their street lights. And they have about 19 or 20,000 lights in the streets of Tucson. They dimmed about 14,000 of them. And usually most of the street lights start out at 90%, which you can see here. And during the night, at midnight, they used to dim them to 60%. Well, during this experiment, they instead dim them to 30% all the time, or in some nights. Others, they brightened them up to 100, and they wanted to see how people respond and what happens. And what they found is that from satellite image is that the differences in the street lighting brightness was not perceptible to people on the street and to drivers. People didn't realize it at all. And the reason is that eyes are very adaptable. Our eyes are built to adjust to light. And what the eyes don't adjust to well is high contrast. But when the light is lower, we can deal with it. We know how to deal with it. When the contrast is higher, we don't do it as well. But what they found is that because the eyes adapt, or probably because the eyes adapted to the light level, people had no complaints whatsoever about the dimmed lighting. They did not even notice in most cases. There was no suggestion or any evidence that the reduced light levels had any adverse effect on public safety. No burglaries, no additional car accidents, nothing. Actually, no perception. And with the implications that came out from this study, and there were other different studies that looked at it as well with the same data, they said two things. One is that it's obviously saving a lot of energy to the city and cost to the city, that they lowered the amount of light and the brightness, and it protected their environment better, their people better, and the biological environment better. But the other implication was interesting because only 20%, they found out that only 20% of light pollution was produced by these lights, the street lights. And the rest of it came from all the other sources, parking lots, traffic, signs, art, all sorts of other sources of light that contributed 80% of the light pollution in Tucson. And so their conclusion was it's up to the city to regulate light pollution because the city can replace its own lights, but they have to regulate light pollution from other sources in order to protect their environment and their people from anything from migrating birds that need to get to where they're going safely, to birds that need to, or insects that need to find the right time when the flower is flowering and no mismatches in timing of flowering and pollinators that can result from light pollution, or cancer. And all of that can be done by significantly lowering the amount of light. And this is why we, in our comment letter, we tried to put a maximum and not a minimum. We didn't change the maximum that staff included in their ordinance, which we support, but we try to remove the minimums and areas where lighting that is not necessary is actually required. The other option that staff has brought up, I guess, is to reduce the amount of lighting altogether. But I do think that essentially asking for a minimum, like Dashiell said, is counterproductive to the goal of this ordinance. So I understand the concern with safety, but requiring a minimum of 1 candle foot for parking lots, for example, that's 100 times the brightness of the sky.
We're at the end of the 10 minutes, but very much appreciated. And thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for consolidating the time. Our next two hands, it does look like they're a part of your group. So Lisa Krupinski, and I have a Linda Ruthruff in the list. So I'll unmute Linda, but if it's the same Linda, then perhaps just a brief expression of support would be appropriate if you'd like to speak. Okay, so our following speakers are Rose Grimes, Peggy Griffin, Lisa Warren, and Connie Cunningham. Welcome, Rose.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So by and large, I'm in support of what Shawnee's been talking about and also Dashiell, but there are a couple of additional points. First of all, as both of them have mentioned, in evaluating the uniformity of the lighting in parking lots versus the foot candle regulation, I can certainly understand why safety considerations and not leaving a regulation haphazard by not including a term like uniformity is something that you wouldn't want to do. You don't want to leave a lot of interpretation available, and the language of uniformity is partly there in order to designate that kind of completeness. But I do think that lowering the light level to 0.5 foot candles would be very reasonable, and particularly since this specific regulation is designed to address light pollution, dark skies. It seems very appropriate to engage in this discussion about lowering the threshold that you require for the illumination. And besides that, I've appreciated the opportunity for the last several months to follow along, so to speak, as the sausage is made, as both of these regulations have been considered. And at this point, I wanted to reflect back to both staff and city council. It's natural when you're doing regulation to think about it in the context of restriction. But I think really what you're doing here is you're providing an opportunity to enhance the environment of Cupertino. You're improving the health of the residents of Cupertino. You're enhancing the ability of gardeners and small kitchen plot farmers to have productivity. You're enhancing the natural environment and the enjoyment of parks. You're really doing something that's very important in considering these regulations to make Cupertino a more dynamic place, a more desirable place, a more enjoyable place, and a place where the residents and visitors alike have an even better experience by engaging in this tough discussion about how to improve bird safety and how to reduce light pollution. So I really appreciate the attention that you've paid to this, and I hope you reflect and take credit for the improvement, the advancement, the enhancement that you're enabling for the community by adopting and discussing and putting so much attention on this kind of opportunity. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose. Our next speaker is Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening, council members and staff. I support the suggestions that Shani and her group suggest, along with a few additional changes. I've sent you emails, but the first one is in section 19.102.030 C2, number 2 specifies low voltage, but it needs to specify an amount of emitted light in some way. Low voltage says nothing about the light intensity. You can have a very bright, extremely blinding light that is low voltage. Next page. Number 2, regarding the first floor exemption for 15 feet for commercial, I would suggest that you do first floor retail. The intent is for displays, retail displays, to have a clear see-through, but not to allow office, any kind of office, whether it's in a commercial zone or just a straight office, to have this exemption. So at least put in, instead of commercial, put retail storefronts in the exemption. Number 3, next page. In the lighting requirements, section 19.102.040B12D, it specifies lighting for commercial and mixed use. Just before that, it says that residential has to turn off their string lights at 11 p.m. I think the same should be for commercial, 11 p.m. or 2 hours after closing. These don't need to be on all night. Next page. And the map, I've been after trying to get a map for a while, and it wasn't until this map came out this weekend that I saw it that I realized that I was in a bird safe zone. I support this ordinance, but this map should have been produced a long time ago. And it wasn't even adequate because it didn't have any street names. I still don't know if I'm definitely in the zone because it doesn't show the houses. So now this map needs to be updated to show exactly which houses are affected. And in the future, this should not happen. The other thing I wanted to say is I agree with the 1-year check-in that Councilwoman Moore suggested after the passage. And I also request that you add a work plan item to look into reducing the street light emission from the city's lights, the city properties, public spaces, and how to work with schools and employers and shopping centers to reduce the existing light that they produce. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Our next speaker is is Lisa Warren, followed by Connie Cunningham. And I see Keith Wandry has a hand raised. Keith was part of the original group, but let's turn back to Lisa at this point. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thanks. So first, I want to totally agree, and I want to request that the language is actually in the motion that the review in a year or whatever decided time is in the motion. So it's not just something that's, oh yeah, we'll do that, that there's really something to refer back to and say, hey, look, you're going to do this. Because I've seen that happen before where it doesn't really happen. And I think it needs to happen in this case. And in a year, you might not have enough, like Pew had said, there might not be enough projects to illustrate whether this is good enough, but you'll have residential information, I believe. So that's one request. I don't want my time to go for this one because on page 57, item 12, string lighting, and I'm not going to give you the number to gobbledygook. And you're right, Mayor, that there's not 57 pages, but not all pages are in here is why the numbers are weird. There is a reference to subsections B and C, but there's A, C, D. B is missing. So that needs to be corrected. And if C is supposed to be B and D is supposed to be C, so be it. But if there's C is really missing, that needs to be added. Or excuse me, B is really missing. I think it's the former, but I'm not sure. And I think that there is a definition page which helps with light trespass, etc. But string lighting, I think, really needs to be defined because all it says here is different from holiday or seasonal lighting. Well, there's all kinds of string lighting these days. So it's really important, I think, to define that better. But yeah. And I agree with what Peggy said. I wasn't sure I read it right, but I don't believe that commercial buildings or areas should have the opportunity to have their string lighting on beyond 11 p.m. or whenever they close if residents can't. I'm much happier that in this combined ordinance that residential has been exempt except for in bird sensitive areas, and I completely agree with that. I also agree with Peggy's concerns about the map not being complete enough. And I didn't see anything really that helped me answer about security lights and floodlights in residential neighborhoods where you have a 6-foot fence and you have a neighbor with a light that floods into your backyard because it's 10 feet up there, side wall, and there's no shield or the shield isn't positioned correctly and like god awful bright gross light comes in.
Time has elapsed at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, thanks. Our next speaker is Connie Cunningham. We do have a couple of other hands raised. I'll note that those hands are in the group. And so Connie will be our last speaker. Welcome, Connie.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Connie Cunningham, and I want to thank you, City Council, for the 2019-2020 City Council Work Program Item to develop a bird safe design in dark skies ordinance. Thank you very much. I commend city staff also for their excellent work on the ordinance that is before you tonight. I support the comments made by Dr. Shani Kleinhaus and Dashiell Leeds. I also agree with Peggy Griffin Please ask to limit exemption to only storefronts for retail and not all commercial activities. Please, no, not please, people used canaries in coal mines to alert miners to toxic air. When the canary died, the miners left the mines to live. Today's toxic lights have more subtle impacts. By paying attention to migrating birds and helping them, we help ourselves. Bird survival is actually human survival. And I did borrow that from the Audubon Society, that phrase. I look forward to your approval of this important ordinance. Thank you so much, Council, for your efforts on this important matter. Bye-bye, or thank you.
Great, thank you, Connie. So I apologize. I don't remember if the public speaker, Keith Wandry, was announced in the very beginning because I wasn't sure if his hand was up. So let me, Keith, if you wanted to express support for the group, that works. Otherwise, I'll unmute your speaker here.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, really quickly, I'm just going to put in this thought, is that for over 20 years, I have worked part-time for the University of California up at Lick Observatory, doing public programs, telescope operations, etc. I've dealt with classes from high school kids to younger kids to from the University of California classes and astronomy classes and such. And just to share an experience with you, when we had a class from a large university in the University of California system come up one year, and this is an example of what the night sky can do, is that they went on a tour. We gave them a tour of the whole thing, all the telescopes. We observed through a telescope, one of the large telescopes there. When we were done and they were leaving, they walked out of our building. And suddenly there was all this oohing and awing as they looked above them at the sky, and there was the Milky Way in all its glory. And the effect it had on those kids, they all went silent. And then they asked if they could lay on the ground and stare at the sky, right? So here are these kids who are in classes, and their commonality for a lot of them is just a requirement taking astronomy to meet a class need. And here they are. They were like kids. They're in little cliques the whole time. And what brought them all together was seeing the Milky Way above them in the sky. And it gave them all perspective. And they were silent. They were whispering to each other. And it was an awe-inspiring effect of what seeing the night sky can do. And I believe truly that if more cities do this kind of thing and start making it, where we can see that again, that it'll bring everybody much more together and a better perspective on the world that we live in and how small and really insignificant it is. And we need, and precious that it is. So that's just my 2 cents worth for the end of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Keith. And we'll bring it back to council at this point. So having completed the presentation, our council questions, comments from the public, before we commence with deliberation, I'd like to ask for a motion in order to allow us to deliberate.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this ordinance of the City Council amending Code 19.102 glass and lighting standard, and to amend Chapter 19.40 residential hillside zones, Chapter 19.60 general commercial zoning, and Chapter 19.72 light industrial standard and industrial park zones, and the Chapter 19.124 parking regulations to implement bird safe and dark sky policies. And I'd like to propose to include a few amendments. So the motion will include that we will review the ordinance in 1 year, and that we would clarify the storefront will be retail storefront only. And then I'd like to amend that we that to include the suggestions by Audubon's Authority, the 1 foot candle in section 19.102.040 for outdoor lighting, 1 foot candle be revised to 0.5 foot candle. And
if I may suggest, there was one typo. There is a lettering error that was noted. It's supposed to be subsection under the string lighting regulations. It was supposed to go from A to B. It jumps from A to C. There is not a section. I just wanted to clarify that. And there is also another typo with regard to the light trespass. Instead of there's a decimal point missing. Instead of the 1 foot candle, it should read 0.1 foot candle for light trespass.
Where's this, Pio?
I'm trying to find that.
Is it in the same section you were referring to?
It's actually in subsection 2A. It's in.
Okay.
So we should include that in the amendment.
If you would. Yes.
Okay. And then also that I would like to see that we don't set minimum light standard. We let the property owner decide what's adequate. So that's I think the third point they mentioned, the exterior light color. They request to remove the requirement to have a white type light for the exterior light color. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Any other amendments, Councilmember Chow, to the first staff recommendation?
Yeah. So that's that's my motion.
Would anyone like to second Vice Mayor Chow's motion?
I second, but I have some comments also.
Now that you've seconded, please feel free to make those comments.
Great. So without us having a good education on what 1 foot candle actually is, I don't think we should approve the reduction thereof. And when I went to go look it up, guidelines for good exterior lighting plans, I am seeing a recommendation for a small commercial parking area at 0.5, but for large areas at 1. So I'd like to see a diagram showing us what 1 foot candle is so that we all know what we're talking about before we make an ordinance that we don't actually understand. And then another comment is it's really ironic that we used to have sodium vapor lamps, which all had the 2700 Kelvin temperature, and we've moved over to LEDs, which are the whiter light. And I hope that the city revisits this, because it truly is about saving energy and protecting the environment and making it better for all of us, not just the birds, but for us sleeping at night. And I will leave it at that. So I await some information about what 1 foot candle versus 0.5 would be like. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, let's see if we have staff feedback on the issue of the foot candle lighting. I mean, I tend to agree with what you're saying. Perhaps it does motivate some study. I mean, I'd be willing to take a look at it when it comes back in a year. That's part of the motion. With the possibility that perhaps we could direct some outreach from a voluntary perspective to see if certain property owners would be willing to adopt the 1/2 foot candle to see.
Well, Mayor Paul, excuse me, just for 1 second. So what I'm seeing is average minimum uniformity ratio limits for parking lots, suggestion that small commercial lots be a minimum at 0.5 foot candles. And they have an average / minimum of 4 to 1. And I don't personally understand what that means. And then they say for public larger lots of 1 foot candle and the same 4 to 0.1 average and minimum. My concern there is that we have some larger lots that are coming in into the city and some of our future development. And I don't want us to make them inappropriately dark.
Okay, so I did ask for staff comment. I didn't hear any forthcoming.
So,
And my suggestion was to see if we could leave that out of the motion at this point, because I'm not sure that, you know, conducting online searches, you know, on the fly is necessarily going to speak to the thoroughness of diligence in this case. So,
I believe Eric Serrano was getting ready to respond.
okay, great. Eric, welcome.
yeah, so 1 foot candle is the elimination of 1 foot in kind of like 1 foot or 1 meter space. So think about how bright a candle is. It's just kind of a cube for that. As Council Member Moore indicated, you know, there are different light thresholds for different types of uses. So, you know, you could reduce that, and that would, you know, just there's different ways that you can do it. I think what we're looking at in our kind of typo that we omitted was that 0.25. The big thing is that it does peter out or kind of dim at the property line, so it doesn't spill over to the adjacent properties. I think that's one thing to just kind of want to reinforce.
Can I comment on that? Why I think 0.5 foot candle makes sense?
Sure. Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay. So in addition to this, I do have other questions still. So, but I'll first address. I think our eyes actually adjust. If you uniformly, it's all 0.5 foot candle, you won't feel it's that dark. And then all you don't need to read in the parking lot. You just need to be able to identify any suspicious figures. It doesn't have to be that bright. 0.5 foot candle is enough for, I think. And if we are not sure, as I understand, the Audubon Society did talk to their experts before they write this letter, which was late because they were waiting to hear from their experts. So I wonder if Dr. Kleinhauser might have some more information that she could provide.
Vice Mayor Chow, were you inviting some further commentary from?
Can we invite her to give us their reasonings for making this recommendation?
Yes, I'll go ahead and reopen the public commentary for Dr. Kleinhaus to respond to your inquiry.
Yeah. Because see, if it's a really large parking lot, then that's a lot of light pollution.
Yeah. This is Shani Kleinhaus again from Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society. Thank you for asking. It wasn't clear to us either, and so I asked Dr. Travis Loncor, who is one of the biggest experts on lighting and light pollution in the United States. He's from UCLA, and that's his life work on light pollution and biological impacts mostly, but not only. His response was that 1 foot candle is equivalent to 100 full moon light brightness. So if you think about the full moon on a night that the night is clear and bright, make that 100 times brighter, and that's 1 foot candle. That was his answer. That's the best I have because that's what I learned from him.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Kleinhaus. And Vice Mayor Chow, let me go on to other comments. Councilmember Way does have her hand raised, and so we'll circle back on other items as well.
Sure, thank you, Mayor Paul. I have one question. I didn't catch the typo mistake on 1 foot light should be 0.1 foot light. Where is that? That's my first question. My second question is I would like to add on Vice Mayor Chow's comment. I think that's a good comment because the Audubon Society and the Sierra Club, they did a lot of research on this, and I would trust that. I like their recommendations to go with the lighter foot candle because, like Vice Mayor Chow says, our eyes really adjust to the lights and to the darkness, and it actually becomes bright if you adjust it. So I would like to propose that we really adopt what the Audubon Society suggests, except maybe the uniform, because Pew actually, somebody said our other ordinance has that word in there. So I'm not sure what's our preference on that one, but I do think we should, I like to adopt the what the Audubon Society suggests.
Okay.
I'm not sure where's that typo is.
Sure. All right. Okay. So let's go to that. Has staff been able to identify the page number?
Yes, it is on page 10 of 39 of attachment A.
Okay.
It's at the very top.
Page 10 of 39. All right. So
it's
that would be enumerated page 55 on the bottom, it looks like.
Correct.
Okay. So you're talking about the third line of text, including the heading?
Yes, that's right. Just the one, it used to be 1 lux, and I believe 1 lux translates to 0.1 foot candle, and that's where the confusion is.
Okay, so the existing motion changes that 1 to 0.1, and then the parenthetical is just be
correct, 0.1.
Accordingly, 0.1. Okay, so that answers that question. And then for the rest of it, it sounded like, Councilmember Way, you're supporting the motion on the table because it doesn't take out the word uniform, and then it does put in the lower candle level, foot candle level. Okay, great. So let me see. I think Vice Mayor Chow has spoken, Councilmember Moore spoke, Councilmember Way. Councilmember Willie, I want to give you an opportunity to, before we start another round.
I definitely like the improved combined ordinance. Great. I like the suggestions from Shawnee and as defined Shawnee and Peggy and some of the others, and worded as Liang has it. The only thing I would toss out is that the 0.5 sounds reasonable to me. Building or business owners are going to set the light level that's going to be appropriate. If they had light spacing too far apart on a walkway, they would then increase the intensity to make sure that it was continuous so people didn't trip over trip hazards. So by setting it at 0.5, it allows them still to use whatever intensity they feel they need. It's, just setting that they could go down. When we say that you can't go below 1 foot candle, if that's the minimum, well, you kind of boxed in the smaller parking areas where Councilman Moore said smaller parking lots are fine with the 0.5, but yet we've now raised the level to 1 foot candle. So I personally don't see a problem with the 0.5. And I would also say that we could revisit it at that 1 year check-in. Should we then get additional input from either the business owners or the public, where if the public thought, gee whiz, there's just still too much light or something, or the business owners are confused, whatever it is. But I think basically we're 98% there, and I think we're good for this first edition. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. I just want to clarify that, and I want to clarify this with staff as well. So the proposal in the motion to take it from 1 foot candle to 0.5 foot candles, that's an adjustment of the maximum, right?
That would be an adjustment of the minimum.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
adjustment of the minimum. Okay,
The
so I was
0.5 would be an adjustment of the minimum, yes.
I'm sorry, once again.
The reduction would be from a minimum of 1 foot candle to a minimum of 0.5.
Oh, minimum of 0.5. Okay, so I was the one who didn't get this correct. Okay, got it. Thank you very much. And then, all right, let's go back to Councilmember Moore at this point.
Just simply to clarify, could we point to this 1 foot candle, give me the section of the code, please, where this is located?
Yes, it is on, again, on page 10, enumerated page 55. It is subsection D, Roman numeral 1.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? We have Councilmember Wei with your hand raised, as well as Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Wei.
Oops. Okay, so do we have a motion and a second yet?
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, we do. Okay, so we're on discussions. So I remember our last bird safety ordinance, and I agree with Vice Mayor Chow that we really would like to extend it to the whole city. Can we have that map of the bird sensitive area map? Because I heard some residents saying that it's very hard to identify which house, and so if we show that map, can the staff show that map?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, so what I see is, I kind of want to agree with Vice Mayor Chow again. We live in a park. I mean, we have tree-lined streets. My backyard, I know my house is not in the bird-sensitive area. My backyard is full of trees, and I see birds all the time. So I really don't see how birds would fly just according to our map, our bird-sensitive map. They fly everywhere. So I don't think my house should be exempted, because if I build a 2-story building with a big shining window, I might kill some birds. So I really like to go back to revisit. I know some residents disagree with it, but I don't feel that if I live 350 feet away from a bird sensitive zone, 50 feet doesn't matter. My neighbor is 50 feet in it, I'm out of it. I just don't feel this is, our biggest city we are a park. The whole city is a park. So I would like the simple part of the following shall be considered treated glasses for the purpose of calculation. So windows 12 feet or smaller are excluded. Windows that entirely blocked by another building wall, it's 10 feet. Those are very easy to define. That's just my point of view. I just feel that I live in a park. The whole Cupertino is a park. My house should not be exempted, because if I have shining windows, I would kill some birds, because they can't fly. They don't know these. They don't fly just through the pink areas. They fly all through our city. So I would really like our council to reconsider and make it simpler. We can exempt smaller windows, 12 square feet or less, and we can exempt windows that's very close to another wall. We know it's not going to be a issue for glasses. And the concern about expensiveness and everything, I think Shanae really said it. Presented. There are many ways to to make a glass safe. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. That would just, I'm hoping that my fellow council members will agree with it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wei. And Vice Mayor Chow has her hand up next, which I think works out well, because Vice Mayor Chow, you made the motion. It seems like there is a suggestion to amend your motion, but please feel free to speak to the matter in general if you want.
Okay, so yeah, I think initially previous meeting or the two before, I think I was also for not exempting single family homes, because even my own home, not in a bird safe area had bird strike before. However, I've since I know residents are concerned, and then I've since looked into that. There are different ways to make existing homes safe, and with this regulation applies only to new ones. So I think what we need is to have a campaign of here are the different ways you can make your window visible by just some things hanging on your window. There are cheap and easy ways so that to make the birds don't mistaken that this is something they can fly through. So I don't think we need to make this a burden for new construction, residential construction. But I would like us to, like some suggested, we should have a work program item to look into our own street lights. How do we reduce that light pollution all over the city? And how do we encourage the existing development and commercial area and the schools to reduce the existing light pollution? And also, how do we help the existing buildings, residential or commercial, to provide the bird safe treatment that without switching the window out? So that's what I hope we could do. And something else is, I have a question regarding the ordinance that there are two places where we say, in the event there is a conflict with Chapter 19.102, the less stringent lightening standards shall apply. But in another place, we say the more stringent lightening standards shall apply. So I don't understand that. Shouldn't we want the stronger, the more stringent one rank apply? Why do we have two different methods?
I think you're referencing the, I think it's in 1972, the light industrial. Did it to allow for them to have more flexibility. In the other areas in our ordinance, we defer to the more stringent requirement.
Yeah, I have a screenshot of that. So,
yeah, 1970.
So this one is the more stringent. So it's under the regulation for off-street parking, and we say that the more stringent of the two applies.
Right.
And then the one in the bottom that's it says less stringent applies. This one is for, I think, light industrial development.
That's in light industrial. Yes.
Yeah, it's for light industrial park. So how come we are not asking to have more stringent apply in both places?
We just, they had a different standard. As you can see, there's a lot of existing lighting standard in that zone. So we just were giving them the flexibility that they already had, but it can be changed if that's warranted from council.
Okay, so yeah, I think it makes more sense to have more stringent standard applied for this also, right? For the.
But if I may,
yeah.
Vice Mayor. So the thinking was that we have very few light industrial areas, and usually the industrial areas have more of a lighting requirement for the uses that they are. And therefore, that was the thinking in allowing the less stringent lighting standards to apply. However, if the council feels that that is too lenient, then certainly the council may suggest an edit to that.
Okay. Yeah, I would prefer that we should adopt the more stringent standard, even for light industrial area. I don't see why they have to be exempt, especially we don't have a lot of them. That shouldn't be an issue when for the new development. And another thing is regarding a question from residents regarding string lighting. I see that we don't really have a definition for that. We only say what's not string lighting, and the request was we do say that okay, residential area, as you can see, that the string lighting should be extinguished by 11 p.m. But for the commercial area, we don't have that requirement. However, I do see that string lighting may be permitted with approval of Director of Community Development. So is it true that for commercial area, they won't even be allowed to have string lighting unless they have an approval, a use permit of some sort from the city?
It is not necessarily a use permit, but it could be some sort of approval from the director. It could be definitely a much lower level of permitting. But we do want, because of the restrictions in terms of the 5%, the 15%, we did want to have some sort of review on that before it was approved. And with regard to the timing on the lighting, there is already a requirement that lighting be turned off at 11 p.m. or 2 hours after, unless people are present. So for residential, that carve out doesn't exist. So we created that for the residential string lighting, but still intend to apply the 11 p.m. requirement for the commercial and mixed use.
I see. So commercial, it's specified not here, but elsewhere.
Correct.
Maybe could we add a reference to that section so that it's more clear?
Yep.
From here that that would be good to know, because I think we do have residential homes that abide by a commercial shopping mall. I think, and then I'm wondering, are we going to have a lookup tool that people can look up with their address whether they are in bird safe zone or not?
We can certainly work on developing something like that. We would probably develop a layer in our GIS to help us figure out whether somebody is subject to those requirements or not, if the council chooses to adopt the bird sensitive map. Or
okay. Final question. One resident mentioned low voltage versus why don't we specify a low light emission? I see that the ordinance does use low voltage in quite a few places, not just one place that Peggy pointed out. So I'm just wondering what's the rationale on that? Or does it make sense to make it low light emission?
It's voltage just refers to the power output. It's what we've seen in different ordinances and in different examples. And in the cases that we've implied it, it's kind of been the best for that particular use. I think it's in string lights and in pathway lights. And I think there's another example of it, but it just kind of makes sense for those particular applications.
So I guess we don't need to say specify light emission, since we do specify like how many foot candles they should have, right? So in here, the intention is so that they use low voltage lights.
Yeah, I mean, we use both low voltage for a particular type of thing, then the light emission. We have like you said, we have foot candles to help with that as well.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, I do see two more hands raised from council members Moore and Willie. I will point out, Vice Mayor, you did make some comments. Your motion is on the table, but your motion is unchanged. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Should I amend them, or should other people come in first?
You know, that's up to you. I just want to point out that your comments have not changed the motion. And for that, you would need to also get the approval of your second, which is Councilmember Moore. So Councilmember Moore is next.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering if we could look at the bird sensitive map again. And I do agree with the member of the public that they needed to have that map earlier if it wasn't in the package. And it seems as though there was some selection of areas, which I'd like to get a look at the map and just make a couple comments. And with regards to the R1 exemption, which came out of the Planning Commission revisions, I think that the public information campaign was that was the goal of the Planning Commission, was that these improvements would be voluntary. So what I'm curious about is the 280 is listed or showing up as a bird sensitive area. And I kind of, you know, if I consider the 280 corridor versus Apple headquarters, 176 acres. It's got full-grown trees, California natives, all over that lot. When I think about the I-280 corridor versus the Apple headquarters, in terms of whether it's bird sensitive, I lean towards believing that Apple headquarters is a bird sensitive area, and much less towards the I-280 for a number of reasons. And I can't think of how many times I've seen a bird along the 280, and I've driven that route many times. Maybe I've seen a red-tailed hawk once in a blue moon. Whereas when you are around the Apple headquarters, that area to me seems, much more a bird-sensitive habitat. So I'm a little bit confused as to how that determination was made, and I hope that is something that you rethink after some more evaluation about that. And perhaps somebody goes out and you could be helped by members of the Audubon Society to see if that truly is a bird-sensitive area that should be protected. I have a question. Is 19.102.0402C, is that being edited? I don't know if in the motion that had some changes to it or not.
Which page?
It's 55. It's at the top. I think it's your PDF 10, but it's page 55 of the ordinance itself. Yeah, up top. It's 2C. No, I'm wrong. 2A. I'm sorry. It's an A.
I thought that's the one. That's the one. Audubon Society modified it.
That is the typo that I had pointed out, Councilmember Moore.
That's the 0.1. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, the answer is yes. It is in the motion.
Okay, excellent. That is quite low.
Councilmember Moore, there may be a specific definition of bird sensitive. I don't think we just decide to designate that on our own. So I thought maybe a description of what bird sensitive, if it's a bird sensitive zone, what those requirements are.
I can go into that a little bit. I can help answer Councilmember Moore's concern about Apple. There aren't really any properties zoned R1 in that part of Cupertino, and so the purpose of this map is to identify parcels or properties that would get impacted as a result of application of the definition that we had, and so certainly that could be considered a property that has a lot of private open space, but that was not what we used to determine because there would be no properties impacted necessarily by that buffer.
Just with the green roof at Valco, then would that end up being a bird sensitive area?
Let us look at that definition. Just give me one quick second. It is a very good point. I guess it would depend on whether that area would be considered open space and park that is dominated by vegetation, including vegetated landscape, forest, meadows, grassland, or wetlands.
Thank you.
So the definition says it's 300 feet of public and private open spaces and parks that are dominated by vegetation. So wouldn't a rooftop park be an open space and park? So that should be bird sensitive area, right?
It could be, but it is not at this point of time. So this map is a draft. And so until that comes into fruition, this map will not be updated.
But according to the definition, whether you update the map or not, according to the definition, that should be a bird sensitive area. I mean, the map doesn't define the ordinance. The ordinance defines the map. That's
it could certainly be, and I think Deputy City Attorney Sarah Clark has something to say about that.
Yeah, that's correct. That in the future, once it's built out, it may qualify under the definition of a bird-sensitive area. It's just that at this point in time, that has not been constructed yet, and so the current site does not meet the definition.
Actually, it doesn't have request. Let's say we have a new development, and it has its own identified open space within that development. Then would windows around the private open space in the development have to use bird safe windows?
Yes, they would, because they would, unless the development is an R1 development, it would not be exempt. If it's in a
so it will be included anyway, right? So then we are okay.
Good point. All right, so Vice Mayor Chow, you still have your hand up, but Vice Mayor.
Okay, so I guess I should amend. Can I try and amend my motion now?
Sure. Yeah. Do you know what's on the table and what you'd like to amend?
Could I add my comments first?
Okay.
Let's do that because Vice Mayor Chow, you did indicate a desire to hear what other people had to say. Councilmember Welly.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the comments that we got from the council, but I really urge us to temper our trying to tweak and tweak and tweak. The Audubon Society has reviewed this and given their comments, and so I hope that we would move to approve what's already on the table, and if there is a need at some point to refine it at the 1 year check-in date, but you know, we're not the scientists, and we're trying to do this wordsmithing that may or may not give us a better outcome. So before we go and start making more changes, I would hope we just really rethink, and we're more likely to get a council that's going to approve the motion that's on the table tonight if we just stay with it as it is. So
Okay, thanks, Councilmember Willie. Let me make my comment. I agree with what you're saying. I think I can support the motion that's on the table. I do appreciate the added thought going into this, but the motion does have a check-in in a year, and so I would exhort the public, residents, the city itself to think about voluntarily dimming some of these lights to the extent that you have commercial interests. There's always the ability to outreach and try to find a voluntarily amenable set of behaviors and actions so that we can have a positive check-in in a year. So that's my input. Vice Mayor Chow, you wanted to circle back again.
Yeah, so I wish, the current motion on the table, I think is the ordinance proposed with the review in 1 year and the retail storefronts, and the 3 proposed recommendation from Audubon Society. And then I'd like to add 2 things that I mentioned earlier. So this is a proposed amendment. And so one is that the staff to clarify the string lighting for commercial zone is specified in a different section of the code. And second is that more stringent standards should apply to light industrial zone so that it's consistent with the other case. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cross-reference to string lighting, which I think should be non-controversial, in the commercial areas, just to clarify the intent of the statute. And then the other one is regarding the light industrial and changing it from the less stringent to the more stringent. That I think, might be, that of course is much more substantive. So let me check in with your seconder. Councilmember Moore, would you accept those amendments, either or both?
Personally, I felt that string lighting was self-explanatory and it didn't need to have further clarification to me. And I agree with our planning manager, Pew Ghosh, about the industrial lighting, and so I would not want to change it. I think that she has a reason, and I believe it.
Okay, so Vice Mayor Chow, unfortunately, it doesn't look like you do have an acceptance from your seconder for either of the proposed amendments to your motion. And so the motion as you made it stands.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, I don't see, actually I do see a raised hand from Councilmember Wei.
Yes, I want to ask a clarifying question. So the amendment is to add all the 3 suggestions from the recommendations from the Audubon Society. But the Audubon Society, the first is 0.5, it actually is a typo. It's the original is 0.1. So we really don't need to, the spill light actually is 0.1.
I can try to clarify that.
Right? Yeah.
So the 0.1 would go in section 19102.040.2A. That is the typo. And the Audubon Society's recommendation about the 0.5 would go in that same number 2, but it would go in subsection D1.
No, I'm sorry, I get that one, but the 19.102.402A is also on their first recommendation. They thought it was used, we suggested 1 candle foot light, so they wanted us to change 0.5 foot candle light. It's a typo, it's 0.1.
Yes, that is what staff is saying.
You don't want to include that one, right?
Correct.
Because yes, okay. I just want to clarify that.
So let me clarify. So this one highlighted, the first, that will be 0.1. We will fix that typo. And the second highlight here, 1, 2, 3 foot candle. So this will be 1.5 to 3 foot candles.
0.5 to 3.
We're trying to compile a list of red lines as we speak. So
okay,
we'll share that.
Okay. Let's do this. Staff, why don't we give you 5 minutes to compile those? We have a motion on the table. We'll come back in 5 minutes, and hopefully we can call for a vote once you indicate what those specific changes are. As written, does that sound workable?
Yes, if we could get maybe 10 minutes to.
10 minutes? Okay, let's reconvene. It's 9:32 now. We'll reconvene at 10:43.